And welcome. It is Wednesday afternoon in East Lansing, Michigan. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. Come on in, gather around. Had a couple of false starts there, but we're finally ready to get it going now on a Wednesday afternoon. Big weekend for Michigan State sports. Michigan State going on the road to play Wisconsin on Friday. Chance for Michigan State to get a big win, try to get their heads above 500 in the Big Ten, and serve notice that they're ready to contend with some of the top 15 teams in the nation. Wisconsin is one of the top 15 teams in the nation at this point. Number 13 in the country. Wisconsin is 15-4, 7-1 in the Big Ten. First place team, a team that beat Michigan State on December 5th, 70-57. Great opportunity for Michigan State. Great opportunity. Michigan State struggled and stammered past Maryland in the second half on Sunday, played excellent basketball in the first half. A lot of steals, a lot of deflections for Michigan State. A lot of deflections on defense in the first half of that game. Maryland, statistically, one of the better defensive teams in the Big Ten in terms of scoring average allowed. Maryland is the best. In terms of field goal percentages, I'm not sure. But, talking to the players yesterday after practice, they felt that Maryland really ratcheted up their defense. Michigan State, what were they, 7 out of 24 in the second half, something like that, with Hoggard and Walker doing almost all of it. And down the stretch, it was Hoggard and Walker who took over. Michigan State outscored Maryland something like 12-6 in the last 5 or 6 minutes. Right after, the turning point that I wrote about in that game was, remember when Tyson Walker, the turning point was Maryland had a 3-point lead. They got an offensive rebound. They're going back up to make it a 5-point lead. And on that offensive rebound, Tyson Walker stripped it, created a fumble, dove for it out of bounds. Carson Cooper dives for it, hustle play. Walker's over there. And Reeves, I think is his name, the big man, looks like he's going for the ball, but ends up getting Tyson Walker's leg, like a single leg takedown in wrestling. Walker looked at him like, that's not too cool. And Walker's looking up at 6'9" Reeves and, giving him the New York City, what's going on here? And Walker was ticked off. From that point forward, Michigan State had the better of the play. I think they outscored Maryland 11-6 from that point on, with Walker and Hoggard doing all the scoring. So Michigan State showing some grit there. Tom Izzo did not like some of the shot selection coming down the stretch. He thought some guys went to the rim when they should have kicked it back out. So shot selection in amongst the trees, not what Izzo wanted, but they gotta win. And in the Big Ten, road wins are good. Maryland, not a great team, but they won. Maryland won at Illinois, capable of playing good basketball. All these teams in the Big Ten capable of playing good basketball on some occasion. I don't know about Michigan. Way back earlier in the year, Michigan played really well against St. John's. Looked like a good team. I'm not sure what's happened to them. Now, McDaniel's not playing on the road, and I assume he will not be playing at Michigan State on Tuesday. We'll have to wait and see. But if Michigan State can get this win at Wisconsin against first place Wisconsin, a team that beat Michigan State by 13 points earlier in the year, and can carry that over against Michigan on Tuesday, it's a chance for Michigan State to really gain some traction and some momentum heading into February. That game when Michigan State played Wisconsin earlier in the year, Malik Hall had been sick all week, had missed practice all week, all the preparation. They didn't expect him to play. Apparently he showed up at the shoot-around and said he felt better, a little bit better, played. Izzo says he had a 101-degree temperature. I talked to Malik Hall after practice last night. Malik said, no, I was feeling okay. I felt like I could play. He wasn't 100%, but he felt like he could play. Malik Hall that day, 2 points. And I said, how difficult was it to play in that game without being involved in the game preparation, film meetings, walkthroughs, installation? He said, no big deal. He knows how Wisconsin plays. So Malik Hall is never one to make excuses, but he was not 100% physically, and the preparedness on defense, the lack thereof against the Badgers showed on that day. Wisconsin was really good back then in early December. The thing about Wisconsin is their veterans know the system so well that when they get into December, they're in February form in December. And I really thought Wisconsin was going to play better against Arizona after that game, and they were blown out by the Wildcats. But Wisconsin got back on it and played good basketball ever since. Now, what happens with Wisconsin sometimes is the rest of the conference catches up to them late in the season. Now, I don't have any data to back that up or data to back that up. Now, last year they were hurt by injuries, but last year they got off to a real strong start. They were in the first place in the Big Ten for a few weeks, injuries, ended up in the NIT. I'm not saying this team's going to end up in the NIT. They've got veteran players. Added AJ Story, gives them some 6'7" size and athleticism at that position, something Michigan State doesn't have in a 6'7" frame on their roster. But Wisconsin being 15-4, 7-1, do I think they're going to double that up and go 14-2? No. Do I think they've got some losses coming in the Big Ten? Yes. Can Michigan State deliver one to them? Yes. Michigan State sometimes plays up in games like this. In situations like this, Michigan State's had more days off. Now you're going to see Wisconsin on a short turnaround. It's not a tremendous turnaround going from Wisconsin to Minnesota in terms of the flight. I'm sure they were back home last night by 1 a.m. or midnight or so. It's not like some of the Michigan State road trips where they don't get back till 3:30 in the morning. So I assume Wisconsin will practice today. Probably be a lighter practice coming off a game with some installation. Then they'll have a practice on Thursday, and then they have to play on Friday. Not ideal for Wisconsin, but they are playing at home. Michigan State had some short turnarounds earlier in the year where they played on the road. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Now, when Michigan State lost that game, did I already mention this? Now I've forgotten which ones I put in the earlier open when I had the microphone off. But just to reiterate, in the game against Wisconsin, Izzo's talked a lot about what Storr and Krull did in terms of three-point shooting in that game. But in terms of Michigan State, Tyson Walker, 22 points, 9 out of 20 from the field, 3 out of 7 from three-point range. Hogard, 14 points, 5 out of 10. Nobody else had more than 5 points for Michigan State. Trey Holloman, 5 points. Jeremy Fears, 5 points. Malik Hall, 2 points. Jaden Akins, only 2 points against Wisconsin in that game. So you have Hall with 2 points, Akins with 2 points. That's a problem. Akins has come around nicely since then, shooting a nice percentage from three-point range. Looked good in practice yesterday, kind of hurt his ankle against Maryland. Missed the last 7 or 8 minutes. He wasn't quite the same in terms of defense. So they finished that game with Holloman at the wing. So Akins has really improved his shot, gotten up close to 40% or maybe over 40%. He's delivering that sniper that they need from him, need more from him on the offensive glass. Michigan State was non-existent on the offensive glass against Maryland. Might have been the worst offensive glass performance I've ever seen from an Izzo team. I think Michigan State missed 27 shots or something like that. Only had 2 offensive rebounds for the game. Whatever it was 6% offensive rebounding. The worst I've ever seen. They don't keep stats like that. You know, ESPN stats, they keep stats on everything, but I don't know. They could probably find that real quickly, but they may not understand the significance of that. But offensive rebounding's got to get a lot better. Akins has to be part of it. He's not the tallest guy, but he's athletic. They need him charging to the glass. The shooting's come around nicely for Akins. The ankle looked pretty good. Defense should be good. So I would anticipate Akins and Hall playing a lot better in this game than they did in the first one. Storr and, was it Wall or Krull? I get them mixed up. Anyway, Wisconsin did a real solid job. All right, enough about that. Football, got football coming up. We'll take some basketball questions too momentarily. We might open up the phone lines. Appreciate people watching and cluing me in that I was clueless in the microphone department. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher of SpartanMag.com. SpartanMag.com is your source for Michigan State sports. What I've done over at the premium message board, SpartanMag.com for subscribers. We'd love for you to become a subscriber over there. Give us a like to this channel, subscribe to the channel. Go to SpartanMag.com, become a subscriber. Give it a try. $1 for a month. Give it a try. Jason Killip doing a great job. Jason Killip killing it as usual, recruiting coverage. It is a recruiting weekend for Michigan State this weekend. They will host some recruits. Got the second February signing day coming up in a couple of weeks. Michigan State in on some interesting players. We will talk about that in a moment. Also, Jake Laskawa doing a great job with his coverage. Noah Sprunger, a great job with coverage and behind the scenes, directing a lot of traffic, doing a great job for us in a lot of ways. Of course, the great, incomparable Paul Konerdijk, associate editor, SpartanMag.com for years. All the things Paul does a great job. Ricardo Cooney, all of them, cast of thousands. Go to SpartanMag.com. You will like it. If you're still watching this nonsense, you will love SpartanMag.com. Become a subscriber. It'll become an addiction. You'll like it. You'll thank me for it later. Have fun with it. In the meantime, over at SpartanMag.com on the Underground Bunker, which is the church of what's happening now for Michigan State sports. It is the daily narrative of Michigan State sports, all things Michigan State sports, and all things in terms of university happenings in general. SpartanMag.com Underground Bunker. Over at the Bunker, I invited SpartanMag.com subscribers to post questions. Mailbag style, we will be answering those questions here today. Also, over in the comments section, I'll take some comments and some questions over there. I know some of you like the afternoon slot. Some of you like it the late night. I've always said we want to do a little bit of both. I always tend to run out of time on things but that's still something I'd like to do. Anyway, question number 1. SpartanMag Mailbag. SpartanMag Live. Spefton from East Lansing. He says, which positions does Michigan State need better players or just more bodies? Do you have any specific targets for the signing date coming up in February? And also, are we targeting any newly available portal recruits? Now, portal recruits, no. It's my understanding that, spring semester began 15 days ago. Was it the first Monday in January? Spring semester has been going on for almost 2.5 weeks now. The university, it's my understanding, they're not going to let someone just transfer in right now 2 weeks after classes have started. You might be able to do that at some programs, but Michigan State is not giving the green light on that. So anyone who's in the portal from Alabama or Washington or the next few days from Michigan, it's possible. I mean, they could transfer at the end of the semester after they finish the semester at their current school. But in terms of shoehorning someone in right now, can't do it. Now, Ohio State is on quarters system. So I don't know where they are in relation to where they are with their, coming into to their, I guess it's not semesters, into their quarter. They've got a different situation than Michigan State does in terms of how far along the current academic period is. But Michigan State, not going to get anyone in the portal right now. Like I said, at the end of spring, possibly if someone is still in the portal or they jump in the portal later. But right now, it's not like they're going to go out and get somebody who just jumped in the portal from Alabama. Not available to them. In terms of visits coming up this weekend, just found out there's an article, Jason Killip had it over at SpartanMag.com. Dimitri Nicholas from Miami, defensive lineman, 6'3", 295, has been committed to Auburn since August. Did not sign with Auburn. He's not visited Auburn since July. He's number 816 in the country. So 3-star type defensive lineman. I've not looked at his film yet. There was a delay with his transcripts of some sort. That's why he didn't sign in December. But now he's told on 3 that Michigan State's in there. Texas, Pittsburgh, Auburn, Louisville. Those are some of the schools. I don't know a lot about him. I'll look at some film later. Jaylen Brown from Texas, Nacogdoches, Texas. Wide receiver, big body guy, about 6'3". He'll be visiting this weekend. Last weekend, Kiona Willhight, defensive lineman from Tucson, Arizona, 6'5", 230. He will take an official visit to Nebraska this weekend. A few days ago, Michigan State got a commitment from a kicker, Martin Connington, committed to Michigan State. He originally had been committed to Boise State. He's from Boise, Idaho. He had committed to Boise State and then committed to Oregon State. Now he's changed that commitment to Michigan State, making the migration along with Jonathan Smith and the staff. Connington, I don't know much about him. I haven't looked at his stats, but in terms of Cole's kicking, he's ranked the number 5 kicker in the country, number 14 punter in the nation. You would think that there'd be more people that would be highly ranked in punting and kicking, but it's not all that common. One of the greats we've seen here at Michigan State over the years, back a few years, was Paul Ettinger. Came to Michigan State as a punter, ended up being a kicker, ended up winning the Citrus Bowl against Florida in 2000, January 1st, 2000, Y2K Day, and ended up being an NFL kicker. But initially, he was a punter at Michigan State. All right, now, I've got some film on Jaylen Brown. The Willhight guy is interesting also, too. I might just dive right into that to use a Jonathan Smith term. We're going to dive into it. The Willhight guy is interesting. When you talk about Willhight, 6'5", 230, athletic, number 627 in the nation, number 13 in Arizona. I look at him and all kinds of exuberant athleticism on this guy. And Willhight initially was signed with Washington. Now he was let out of that signature because of the coaching change. Oregon State recruited him, so Michigan State's current coaches were able to get back involved with him. And they were able to get a visit out of him. You talk about, defensive line coach Legi Sui Aonoa. You watch that guy. We've not had a chance to interview him yet, but you watch some of his interview his interviews, the videos when he was at Oregon State, talking about Legisue Aonoa. He's been with Jonathan Smith a number of years at Oregon State. Prior to that, he had been at the University of Hawaii. I think he was defensive coordinator at Hawaii. And real strong personality, likable, and just a guy. You can see why players, defensive linemen, they find him relatable. I think he's going to be a really interesting addition to this coaching staff. So he gets back in on Willhight. Willhight's visited last weekend. And if he commits to Michigan State, he would become the third highest ranked recruit in the 24 class. Excuse me. Remember to turn the button back on that time. I'm not sure he's all of 6'5". Pretty good ability to run the hoop, change direction. On this video, there's some. I don't include in this one, but there's some video where he's taking on wham blocks or pullers, and he kind of uses his hands to get off the blocks. At his school, he's not really been coached to really take those guys on physically. So the thing that he'll need to improve upon is being more physical at the point of attack. There was one play when he takes on a tight end and he's two-gapping, presses him, reads the running back, disengages, chases it down at the sideline. I don't think that's on this clip either. But very athletic, gets off his feet quickly, live feet for a long frame, and a real interesting one. Let's see what we've got on Willhight here. I've not gone over all of it. Now I think it looks like it's working. We tried this a few weeks ago, and we had trouble with the snap, but it looks like the video is working. But now some of this video also I think is cranked up a little bit fast. But you will see athleticism from him. All right, you see him there's down lineman. All right, little duck under, kind of a rip move. Closing speed. This is Kiona Willhight, visited last weekend. All right, that time shock and control, gets a pretty big left tackle there. Presses him and gets off that block. Where's he at now? Down lineman, left defensive end. Change of direction, makes a read. Speed. Didn't really, and ragdolls him at the end. He's got some strength there at the end. Has some straight line speed. Didn't really show it on that one. You'll see an interception later where he shows some straight line speed. Here he is, two gap and a right tackle. Again, shot control press. Ducks inside, disengage, two gaps. Now he's going to converge and ragdoll. So he's got some strength, explosive athlete. I can see where this guy would be number 816 in the country. Seems like he's a little bit better than that. And adding him to the class at this position would be a big deal. Again, shot control, makes a read, keeps that outside shoulder free, heavy finish at the end. Where is he at? Left defensive end. I don't know if you guys want to watch this or not. I think you probably do. You guys want to talk some football, right? Here's a wham block that's going to leave him unblocked and gets him on the ground, running back tackle. Out in space, 2-point stance. Really, bull rushes that guy. Let's back that up a little bit so you get a little sense for his power. From a 2-point stance out in the slot. Bull rush, puts that guy in skates, affects the play. There's one thing about these videos, I swear, there's not a lot of pocket passing. Well, here's a pocket pass. Bull rush going inside, gets involved. Most of this is like zone read, RPO defense. 2-point stance, counter move on turf. That leaping ability there, you'll see show up in some of these. When you talk about suddenness, gets up and blocks that. At 6'5", they've done that a lot at Michigan in the last couple of years, really emphasized tipping and blocking passes with taller pass rushers. This is a guy that can do that as well. Inside rush, goes around the running back. I guess they're setting up a screen, but you saw some acceleration from him there. I'm enjoying doing this. I don't know if you guys are, but I like going over this stuff. So this guy visited Michigan State last weekend. Using his hands, plants that outside foot, changes direction, the ankle flexibility, then the ragdoll. left defensive end. Leaving him unblocked, zone read. You'll see that in some of these things where they leave him unblocked and try to option him to make him wrong. So some of these teams are like, okay, we're not going to block this guy. We're just going to leave him unblocked. And here's an arm over move and going low to make the tackle. I mean, to come in at that speed and go low, some people say that gets a little dangerous, but it takes an athlete to do that at 6'5". And that arm over, let's rewind that again. The arm over move that we haven't seen a lot in some of these films, that just shows he's got a pretty good toolkit. Use of his hands and some of the moves. Arm over, used to be called a swim move. They call it arm over these days. And gets low for the tackle. The guy doesn't get away. Kiona Willhight, there's a change of direction also. And some of the ankle flexibility to run the hoop at the end. Now in this one, he gets moved off the point a little bit. Big right tackle gets into him and moves him off. He's a little bit late off the ball. The other guy makes first contact, low contact, pushes him back. But he manages to shuck that block. Shucking a block is something that Frank Boyles used to say back in the 70s. You don't hear that term anymore. It's defeating a block these days. I don't know. But he gets off that block and clotheslines the dude. So I'm not sure that was a strength defeat, or I think he was just kind of late on that particular play. I think this guy would be a big addition to the recruiting class. He's visiting Nebraska this weekend. Shooting a gap inside, finding it. That one was a little bit downstream. Didn't get off the block as well perfectly on that one. Is this Jaylen? What's going on here? That's I'm not thinking. I don't know. That's nobody. That snuck into the reel. I'm not sure what happened there. Wait a minute. I think is this Jaylen Brown now? Did these get spliced together? This is Jaylen Brown. Now, this is the wide receiver from Texas, from Nacogdoches. I don't know how this got in here. We're going to talk about Jaylen Brown later. Did it switch on me? Yeah, we'll get into him later. Anyway, that was Willhight. And we didn't get to see, there was a video of him when he gets an interception, Willhight, and heading down the sideline with all kinds of speed. Maybe we'll get to that next week or something. We'll see if he commits to Michigan State. I'm not really sure what happened there. We kind of got it worked out fine in rehearsal. I'm not sure how that Jaylen Brown video got spliced into there. Now, see, I'm not like a cornerback who needs to have a short memory and just play the next play. I'm more like, okay, how did that happen? How did the Jaylen Brown video highlights get in there? What are we going to do about it? How can we prevent that from happening next time? Instead of just like getting back in the huddle and going to the next play. Let's see here. I'm just going to look at something here. Yeah, I don't know how this. You know what? There's some good Willhight stuff, and I'm kind of wanting to put it back in here. How did that happen? I'm going to put this back in, and I'm going to zip through this. And does it end up getting back to the... I know some of you guys want to see Jaylen Brown, but... What I'm going to do, if you want me to, I'm going to go over some more film. You guys let me know if you want to see some more film of Willhight, and we'll do it. Because we didn't see his best there. We saw some good stuff, but there is more there. Let's get back to the mailbag. Let me know if you want to see more video. Now, so Jaylen Brown is a guy who's going to be visiting this weekend. He's kind of unranked right now. Number 108 in Texas by another outlet. And Nacogdoches, Texas. He's listed at 6'4", 185. I'm not saying that right. Nacogdoches, Texas. I should know because I was involved in a 2-car pileup there back in the spring of 1991. Went down to spring break with 3 cars, came back with 2. It was early morning on a Sunday. I'm glad we all came out of it okay. But it wasn't our fault. Anyway, and there's a guy that was involved in that watches this program. Two of them. We'll see if they have some comments or not. So Brown, Michigan State offered on January 17th. You watch his video, and I'm surprised that Jaylen Brown is unranked in terms of offers. He had a basketball offer from North American University this year as a senior. 55 catches, 910 yards, 11 touchdowns. Official visit to Michigan State this weekend. At 6'4", good body control, quick off the line of scrimmage, quick into his release moves, good long strider, smooth and natural, fast stride, smooth stride, natural stride. He's got a good build to him. Looks like he has strong hands to take advantage of that height and range and catch radius. High points the ball. He's agile. He's athletic. He's not just a tall guy that uses his height. He is an athlete. And he looks like, athletically, I'd say he's like a notch up from Christian Patrick, not as big. Christian Fitzpatrick had some ability, had 18 catches this year. Not always the most responsible receiver, not the most accountable on and off the field in a lot of ways. Had some talent. Jaylen Brown, more explosive. Let's go ahead and look at some Jaylen Brown. Wide receiver is going to be visiting this weekend. Where's he at? Well, I don't know if I loaded that. Oh, they were kind of combined there. So it's in this Willhight video. I'll just fast forward it to the Jaylen Brown part. That's where I got confused on this because all of a sudden some Jaylen Brown showed up. Here he is. Catches a little hitch, but you see some strength here. They're trying to press him. He's down here at the bottom of the screen, number 3 at the 30. See the 30, the number's right there. He's being pressed by a little guy. Little guy, give him credit, man. But like Gorilla Monsoon used to say, a good little man never ever beat a good big man. So Brown gets off the line. It's a hitch. And run after the catch. Some acceleration here. They say he's 6'4". I'm not sure he's 6'4", but he's tall. He might be about 6'3". Outside there, you see him. Short side of the field. Cameraman loses it a little bit, but one-handed catch. Keeps his balance. And then some gears. Long strider. Not the longest strider, but long enough. And athletic. Off coverage down here to this side. Fade against the off coverage. So they're respecting him with all that off coverage, and he still beats double team with what looked like a one-handed catch. All right, now he's getting pressed over here short. He's playing defense here. I'm sorry. I had it turned around. Short side of the field's getting pressed. Bodies up. Uses that height, strength into the end zone. This guy's not ranked. If this guy were in the state of Michigan, I think he'd be a top 10 player. I'm not sure how he was been hidden, but Michigan State went out there and found him. One-handed catch. I'm not sure what other schools Jason Killip would know. I'll text him right now. Some of you might know. I've kind of forgotten. He hasn't got back to me yet on that. I've not checked the comments yet. Some of you guys might not be liking this, but I'm enjoying it. So we're just kind of hanging out. What do we have here? All right, that's the wide receiver off coverage again on the post. What happened? I didn't see that. I got to rewind that. All right, they highlight the wrong guy. It's not the guy who's circled. Jaylen Brown is the wide receiver, number 1 receiver on the outside. That guy right there. Post. Kind of cameraman loses him. We don't really get to see the catch, but double coverage again. Defenses, you can tell, are giving him a lot of attention. Off coverage with safety help. Got quads to the right and Brown by himself to the left against press. Good luck. Strong with that release move. Got some upper body strength and some acceleration to go with it. Catch radius. I don't know. Looks pretty good. Courtney Hawkins down there in Texas recruiting for Michigan State, especially in the Houston area. Nachadocious, I don't think it's in the Houston area. But it's Texas. It's wide receiver coach down there again to the boundary. Lefty quarterback goes high and gets some burst, initial burst for a big guy. It doesn't take all day to get moving. Catches it, and literally when he hits the ground running, he hits the ground running. By himself as the X again, short side of the field. Press coverage. Jaylen Brown visiting Michigan State this weekend. fade, high point, got the rebound. Again, an excellent basketball player, had some scholarship offers for basketball. Michigan State trying to sneak him out of Texas visiting this weekend. We'll see what becomes of him, but just a flag go route, runs by the guy grabs his jersey and gets the tackle. Flag for holding, saves a touchdown, but that guy was gone. Outside, 2x2. Number 1 receiver to the field, coming inside in a tunnel. Oh, he's playing defense. I was wrong. See, I haven't gone over it. I'm watching this for about the second time, but here's some speed. Pulling away from the white shirts. This is the second or third time I've watched this, so I knew there was a defensive clip coming up there, but I blew it. My bad. Error on me. Another fade. Can't really see how he's winning these, but it's always double teams. Free play. Defense offside. Gets a rebound again. Man amongst boys. Off coverage. One after another. Quick off the line of scrimmage and stops quickly on that hitch or comeback or curl. The ability to get up to speed and stop. Plant and stop. Again, doing it again off coverage. I think it's the same thing here. Stop. Could have come back a little more sharply on that, but a big guy at a young age being able to stop on a dime, the ability to stop on some of those curls and comebacks and hitches, and then sets you up for a double move. We've not seen a double move here. Slant, mesh, get to him. Now he's going to scramble rules. He's going to mirror his quarterback, scrambling with him, gets open, preserves a play for them. I don't know. It looks coachable, looks athletic. It's got the size. Scramble rules again. And some football IQ on these scramble rules plays. You got to like him. You can see why Michigan State likes him. That quick takeoff getting in his release move against cover 2. Settled into the cover 2 hole there, but the corner ran by him. Got open. But quick off the line of scrimmage, quick into his release moves. Physical with it. Run after the catch. Jaylen Brown, listed at 6'4", Nacogdoches, Texas, visiting Michigan State this weekend. Goes high. Just doing a lot of stuff. I'll go ahead and shut it down. Some of y'all might be getting bored with it, but good times. Got one more. That quick off the line of scrimmage and then shuts it down on that hitch. Jaylen Brown, I mean, you can see why Michigan State likes him. I'm curious as to why other schools weren't in on him, but interesting one. Michigan State turned over a lot of rocks to get involved with him. He'll visit Michigan State this weekend. Let's get to question number 2 in the mailbag. Nick from Arlington, Virginia says, is Jackson Kohler on a tight minutes limit? Is Jackson Kohler on a tight minutes limit? In other words, like a pitch count type of situation. Jackson Kohler, sophomore center, coming off injury that sidelined him half of October, all of November, or all of December. Watched him in practice yesterday. He's feeling good. So I don't think it's a pitch count physical thing. It's not in terms of trying to prevent a recurring injury that I know of. He played, 2 minutes against Maryland, fed him in the post that one time. Inside spin move, reverse layup, looked really good. Not a drop step, but it was a spin off the inside foot. And looked good. He's got all those skills down there, and Michigan State could use that interior scoring. It could really open up things on the outside with inside-outside passing if you get the inside established. Michigan State's been unable to get the inside established with the 5-man. Malik Hall's been able to post up a little bit as the 4-man. But Kohler can definitely give them something in terms of offense. The question has always been, will he give up more on defense than he gives you on offense? And he tries hard. The want-to level is there. Last year his playing time was uneven, didn't play a whole lot, played some, showed some offensive skill, but lacked lateral movement. Last year's a true freshman. He really worked on losing some weight, strengthening the weight that he has, really worked on his lateral movement. When I went to Moneyball this summer to watch Kohler, all that I watched was how he was moving laterally. And there were times when he would guard guards, because it's mostly a guard league, but he wanted to work on his lateral movement, and it was improving. I was not convinced that it was the level at which it's needed against the type of ball screen actions that you see at the highest level of college basketball. But that's what he was working toward. That's what he needed to do to get on the court more consistently and maybe even become a starter. So he's making progress in the lateral movement area. Then he gets injured foot and has to miss 2 weeks, 2 months, surgery. Coming back, you can't expect him to be as quick as he was in August. And it's not like he was Carl Lewis in August. So the lateral movement is still a work in progress. You saw that when he played Illinois, got in the game, and Illinois is not a team that really drag races the center on a rim run, but when Kohler was in the game, they drag raced the center on a rim run. I think it was Coleman Hawkins, beat him down court, scored. So if you're giving up points on defense, even though his mind is in it and he wants to play well on defense, if the physical capabilities are such that he can't do that, he's probably going to end up giving up more points than he gives you. And that's not a trade Michigan State wants to make. They'll play him and they'll develop him and they'll see where that lateral movement is. But over the course of time, if he's on the court a lot, there will be some teams that'll put him in ball screens, and the inability to show and get back, it creates holes. It's an area that Michigan State is working on. These are areas of roster development, player development, as Michigan State tries to put the puzzle pieces together in time for February and March. Kohler's one of them. He's not on a pitch count. It's in a capabilities count. And he didn't play in the second half against Maryland. That game was starting to get away a little bit. I was a little bit surprised as well as he looked in that one move in the first half. I kind of thought he'd play in the second half, but defense is still the question. They need something from him in the weeks ahead. They also need some development from Carson Cooper or Cohen Carr at the 4, because Malik Carr played too many minutes in the second half against Maryland. And I mentioned that in my rehash and analysis story after the game against Maryland, and Izzo didn't really mention it after the game. He did mention that we got tired a little bit, which some people are sick of hearing, but there's different reasons for why that happens. One is Jaden Akins gets hurt, so it messes up their rotation. Malik Hall played more minutes than I think he's capable of. I think there's a point of diminishing returns with Malik Hall. Good player, had a great first half. Second half got off to kind of a slow start, and then by the end, I thought he was visibly exhausted. There was one play when they threw it into the post with about 7 minutes to go. He makes a move, gets it back out to Holloman, and signals like he wants it to reverse to the other side. Holloman didn't see it. He reposts it because they've worked on post. Get it back, get it in, get it back out, get it back in, repost. Got it back into him. Hall didn't really want it. There's 11 on the shot clock. Goes for a move, gets snuffed, gets the offensive rebound, steps out of bounds, turnover. It's a media timeout, the under 8 timeout, and you can see him looking at Holloman like he wanted it to reverse again, and Malik Hall at that point walking to the bench, visibly exhausted. So I think he played 33, 34 minutes. Malik Hall's a guy that's always played about 20 minutes. He always split time with Joey Hauser the last 2 or 3 years. So it's the first time he's played that many minutes. Not only does he have to get adjusted to that, he doesn't have a capable backup. Xavier Booker isn't that guy. Maybe in the future he could be. This season, I kind of doubt it. They're still working on it. And I told you guys to be patient with him and not to expect a whole lot. And that's what's happened. Even though he was ranked 5-star and everybody thought he was great. And on our message board, Paul Konerdijk and I are like, hey, be patient. He's not Paolo Banchero. And a lot of people looked at the stars and looked at some of the highlight film and told us that we were crazy. You can't judge everything by highlight film. I could put together a highlight film to make Tum Tum Nairn look like Pete Maravich. Give me a better example. Someone that can shoot. Nothing against Tum. Great player. But if you only showed video of Tum Tum Nairn making jump shots, you would think, oh, that guy can shoot. Couldn't shoot. Nothing against him. Great guy, sweetheart of a guy, great leader. Going to be a good coach. But that's my point. You all know that Tum Tum Nairn was not a shooter. But if I only show you 15 video clips of him making shots, you'll think he's Calvin Murphy. Those of you that remember Calvin Murphy. So Booker's not going to be there. They're going to keep working on him, but he's still a guy that doesn't know what he doesn't know. He tries. He's mindful of everything. He's giving effort, but just being able to play hard and knowing where to be, not necessarily like knowing the plays. He knows the plays, but knowing where to go basketball IQ wise when a play is developing, and having the physical ability to own and command his space and not take those little habitual 1-second vacations. Playing hard. It's going to take a while, as you see. Cohen Carr, 6'5", is not a natural 4. He's not a stretch four, can't shoot it, but he's a great jumper, and he's an energy guy, and he's productive when he's in there. Got beat on an offensive rebound late in the first half against Maryland, and he only played a couple minutes in the second half. Izzo said after the game, Carr had some freshman moments. They didn't feel like they could trust him, so they had to go with Hall because Booker's not available to give you what you want, and Carr is still learning. Well, Carr has to come around, and he wants to do it. He's coachable. They love him. He's exuberant. He's athletic. He's not going to give you the shot, but he's working on it. But he can flash at the free throw line and do some things and create some excitement. That's a guy that has the capability of becoming a 14-minute guy, 7 minutes per half, and not be a detriment in terms of defensive awareness. That has to happen, in my opinion, for this team to go from where they are to another level so that Malik Hall does not have to play 34 minutes. I talked to Malik Hall after practice yesterday about that, about getting accustomed to playing more minutes without Hauser and not having a lot of backup. And Malik Hall, again, he wants the minutes. He can do it. He just needs to get that second win, and he's fine. That's what he says, and I'm glad he's confident. But the team is better off, in my opinion, if he's playing 30 and if they can get a good, strong 10 from Carr. And then Carr can play in the backcourt a little bit for 2 or 3 or 4 minutes to give him 15 minutes for the game. And there's going to be a time when Malik Hall's in foul trouble. Then what do you do at the 4? That could be a big problem. That's one of the weaknesses of this team. It's not a complete team, and some of those things can spring up. But when they're on and those things aren't showing themselves and matchups are good, they can look pretty good. Maybe even great. Looked great for a while against Baylor. Looked great in the first half against Maryland. That is in there somewhere. Can they harness it and be consistent? Have to wait and see. I'm getting into answers here that are some questions that are coming up later. But all that stuff goes together. Carson Cooper's played some power forward last year at the end of the year. He's done it a little bit this year. That's going to be something Michigan State's going to be looking at a little bit more for Cooper to be a backup to Malik Hall. Because with Kohler coming in and getting some minutes, in order for Cooper to get minutes, he can slide to the 4 a little bit. Cooper does not give them any shooting at the 4, something that they need, but he can move his feet laterally on most mismatched stretch 4s. But the offensive problems, not really offensive problems, but offensive limitations with Cooper, not ideal. All right, let's go over here to the comments section. This is not your usual SpartanMag Live. I spent a lot of time on video, spent a lot of time talking about going long on some things. I've got to put a tweet out here to let people know that this nonsense is taking place. So bear with me for a second as I do that. We're commercial free here, which might be good or bad depending on how you feel about it. But in the meantime, I will tell you we'd love to have you as a subscriber over at SpartanMag.com as we cover late signing day, head into winter football and spring practice. It's good fun as I do that. We're commercial. SpartanMag.com. Let's see, I'm going to post right here on Twitter. I still call it Twitter. All right, there's that. Let's go over here to the comments area. Now I'm going to sift through some of these when you guys were talking about, when I didn't have my microphone on earlier. Got Steve Meyer. Says, hi, Comp, having visions of Plax Jr. driving David Boston Jr. into Spartan Stadium turf, just like his dad did from McKinney, Texas. Elijah Burris, 10th grader, had a big year out in New Jersey. I was looking at his film yesterday, too. Notre Dame offered. I'm hearing Michigan State's in on him. I think you'll see some movement there at some point. I don't know. I'm not in their war room. I don't know if they're going to offer. I kind of assume that they will. But Elijah Burris looks pretty good. He's not as big as Plax was. What was Plax? 6'5", 6'6"? Plex, not Plax. Plex. But Elijah's good. Different type of receiver, but he's good. Now driving David Boston Jr. into Spartan Stadium turf, I think you're thinking about David Terrell at Michigan, not David Boston. When David Terrell... That was his name, right? Good wide receiver at Michigan. Terrell played some corner for Michigan, and they put Terrell on Plax. It was a running play, and Plax put him on skates, drove him into the turf. So not David Boston, David Terrell, but I get what you're saying. Mark Webster says, football recruiting is very encouraging. They are all over the Midwest. Jonathan Smith and staff off to a good start. I would agree with that. Bill Houston says, Jim, injuries were a huge issue the last 2 years. There's a popular Dan Campbell clip from summer practices where he talks about the importance of going live to avoid injuries later. That's interesting because Mel Tucker took the opposite approach. They didn't go live as much in the spring and in preseason. They wanted to be injury-free because they thought injuries was really a debilitating thing in 2022, and it was. They've changed strength coaches now. I don't know a lot about exercise science and injury prevention, but people that I know that used to be players thought that there were too many soft tissue injuries. I'm not qualified to talk about that, but that's something that players have talked about. I've not heard that from coaches. But Tucker, trying to get something done last year, went live less. And then did they avoid injuries this year? I don't know. But the alarming thing was in the fourth quarter, the way Maryland and Minnesota ran the ball. In the fourth quarter of those games at Michigan State could not stop the run. It's one thing when you can't stop the run against Michigan and Ohio State, okay. But Rutgers, Michigan State was up in that game 24-6, had some special teams meltdowns, and when Michigan State needed to get stops in the fourth quarter, could not do it, could not stop the run to save their lives. And then was it a week later, same thing at Minnesota, or a couple weeks later? Bill Hushin, following up, do you think it's possible Tucker's light practices contributed to the injury? Again, I don't know much about exercise science, but I do know that they were soft in the fourth quarter against the run. Lost the sound. Now everybody's telling me it's muted, no audio. You're on mute, and everybody's letting me know that, and I feel like an idiot. Finally got it straightened out. Mark Webster thought I was finally explaining why Lake Superior is the best, and I was, but now it's not on. And James Bannon, but it's not on record. James Bannon texted him. Appreciate that, James. You're the guy that clued me in. Really appreciate it. Somebody called it. I'm glad you guys were all trying to get my phone to work. And, yep, not my best moment. I've had some poor ones. Finally got it going here. I'm scrolling through it for the first time. Yeah, I need a big red light in the studio that glows on mute. Yes, you're right. It's a little one right here. You're right. Yeah, comparisons to Ross Ells. I accept that. YT Sparty saying it's an odd time for a live stream. I've got some things to do tonight. Plus, I want to do it last night. I had some things to do last night. So that's why we're going in the afternoon. Mixing it up a little bit might be something we do more in the future. Anyway, questions. Let's go to question number 3. Sherlock in Sterling Heights asks a big Kohler question. Carson Cooper at the 4. Okay. The question is Sherlock from Sterling Heights. It says, so Jeremy Fears is out for the year, right? How much help do you think Jackson Kohler will be for us in March? And I just talked about that, about the other Kohler question. As far as Fears, they think he's out for the year. They don't want to limit him mentally and psychologically about what he's pushing toward right now, but they're not expecting him to be back. They're making plans as they go without him. But they love the mental strength and psychological strength that Jeremy Fears is showing. Jake Laskow did a really good story on that over at SpartanMag.com. You can go check that out if you're a subscriber. If you're not a subscriber, go over there, become $1 for 1 month. You'll like it. Fears. Saw him in practice yesterday, was on the exercise bike a little bit. Izzo said yesterday he spent some time on the treadmill. He's off crutches. He's coming along slowly. A near tragic situation. We're all just for humanity's sake, we're all so thankful that didn't go any worse than it could have. Basketball-wise, they have to wait and see. They'll be doing some x-rays and other tests in the weeks to come to see how the bone is healing. But, man, Izzo loves Fears. This kid's a leader. He's stayed engaged. He's seeing things from the sidelines. He's helping the point guards. He's in huddles. He's talking. Really an exceptionally strong, mentally strong, intelligent, vocal. He's straight out of central casting for what Izzo would want from a vocal point guard. It's wonderful. But yeah, not expecting anything from him this year. So how much do I think Jackson Kohler will help? I just talked about Kohler a minute ago. Kohler is a big question. He gives them so much offensive skill. He had offensive skill last year. Now it's even better this year. The question is the defensive lateral movement. Talked about that a few minutes ago. I'm not going to go back over that, even though we might have some more people coming in from Twitter right now. Carson Cooper at the 4, Cohen Carr at the 4. Those are the guys that are going to have to help there at that position to back up Malik Hall. because Malik Hall gets a point of diminishing returns if he plays too many minutes. And a lot of people are like, what, playing too many minutes? What's that about? Notre Dame, well, maybe not anymore, but there's other teams that play players 40 minutes, and they're fine with it. Well, first of all, Michigan State plays a different system. The blitz counter break, which looked good in the first half against Maryland, that only works if you run it every single time, after a made basket, running every single time. The four-man, and everybody has to sprint, and in order for that thing to work, the center's got to rim run to the rim as hard as he can, and if a center's doing that every single time, it gets tiring, and a center at Michigan State cannot play 40 minutes. The wings sprint the sidelines every single time, and if you don't do it every single time, the blitz counter break does not work. And if you're going to sprint the after makes every single time down the sidelines every single time off of makes, not to mention off of misses and rebounds, you cannot play 40 minutes if you're doing that at Michigan State. The four-man, the basket's made, he's taken out of bounds as quickly as he can, gets it out of bounds, runs as fast as he can to the top of the key. There's ball reversal for a top of the key three-pointer. That's what Hauser used to do. That's what A.J. Granger used to do. It's running. It's every single time. And that's just on offense. Defense, Michigan State has different ball screen coverages more than most teams. The mental part of it and getting out hard, ball screen defense, recovering, tagging, rebounding, and emphasis at Michigan State's not been good lately. It was not good against Maryland, but you know that Michigan State works on that. So the defense, the rebounding, the running, all that stuff. You cannot play 40 minutes at Michigan State. You might be able to do it at some of these other programs, but look at the rafters and tell me how many of those programs have that many banners. Some of them do real well. They do their system. They work their plan their work, and they do it, and that's great. That's fine. But at Michigan State, they do it this way. They run the Heathcote counter break. It's what they've been doing for years. They're hanging up banners. You cannot play 40 minutes. I have to say that every year. They play 40 minutes at Duke, different system. They play 40 minutes at Wisconsin. They walk it up the court, different system. Michigan State has success with the system. They plan, they work, their plan, and it works out well. Malik Hall, it's first time. Did I say Malik Carr again? It's the first time Malik Hall has had to play that many minutes of the system, and I think there was a point of diminishing returns against Maryland. For this team to be at its best, Cohen Carr or somebody has to come up and alleviate him so that he's not playing more than 33 minutes. Just my opinion, and I think Izzo feels the same way. I haven't had a chance to ask him about it specifically. But in his press conference yesterday on Tuesday at Breslin Center, he talked about Hall did get tired and some other people did get tired. And the rest of that statement is they need someone else to come in and take some of those minutes from him without hurting the team. Cohen Carr has to do it. Cohen Carr is capable. Even though he doesn't have power forward size, doesn't give him stretch for shooting, he can do some other things. But there will be some teams that go big that they might not be able to do that. So Carson Cooper, can he play some four? They've got to work on that as well. Kohler's got good offensive skill, and for this team to reach its potential, it would be great for this team to get that component from Kohler. In order to get that from him, he has to show that he can move his feet laterally on defense. Question 5, Spartan Frog from Naperville, Illinois says, I know the recruiting progress just started for the new staff recently. Are there any players you think the new staff can make up ground with? Any players they can make up ground with? There's a lot of them in the 2025s, talking about current juniors. This week, they just re-offered Caden Strayhorn, originally from the Detroit area, 6'3", 290. He's at the IMG Academy now. He's the son, of course, of former Michigan State great Jason Strayhorn. And yes, Jason Strayhorn was a great. Jason Strayhorn was all Big Ten center. Early Sabin years, which would have been like 95, 96. So Caden Strayhorn, ranked number 403 in the country by On3, number 229 by ESPN. If he were taller, he'd be ranked higher, but he's a good, solid player. By the way, I remember Jason showing me some video of him as a baseball player when he was 12 or 13. Dude had a nice swing in baseball, too. Looked like a little Cecil Fielder out there. Of course, he's focused on football, and good for him. So Michalczyk, Michigan State's offensive line coach Jim Michalczyk, got in touch with him this week, re-offered. I talked to Jonathan Smith a little bit last week, and he said Michigan State was in the process of looking at the players the previous staff offered and issuing re-offers. So one by one film study, and Strayhorn got his re-offer. Strayhorn, in the article by Jason Killip, said he hadn't heard from Michigan State a whole lot, but he was happy to hear from them. He's not met them face-to-face. He's looking forward to it, an official visit. He's planning one to Michigan State coming up in the weeks and months ahead. So that one is restarting. So there were times when that recruitment of Strayhorn has been a little bit uneven. I know Alabama and Michigan have been in on him. Now Michigan could be having a coaching change. So that when you're talking about catching, making up ground, that would be one. Even though he's a legacy, Jason's going to let the young man, make his own decisions. That's going to be a real recruitment. Michigan State obviously has some potential to make up ground quickly there, but it's going to come down to what they can sell. And, Michigan State's got some things to sell. The facility's good. Facility's great. The coaching's going to be good, especially on the offensive line. And NIL-wise, they got to get that stuff straightened out too. And it's in the process. The new Spartan Nation NIL thing, I think, has some potential. Some others that they're regaining ground on, Avery Gock from Birmingham Groves. I think I'm pronouncing that right. I've not seen him at the camps yet. Look forward to covering him. Jason Killeb's been in contact with him. Michigan State reoffered him. Now, prior to the coaching change, I know Gock and the family, they were not really high on the whole Mel Tucker scene. Now that Tucker's gone, now that Jonathan Smith's in there, more his type of guy. Birmingham Groves, 4-star. His parents went to Michigan State. Michigan State's got a chance to make up some ground there. Offensive line also, Khalif Conti from Cass Tech. They've reoffered him. He'd visited Michigan State a few times. So there's some offensive linemen here close to home that Michigan State's got a shot to reel in, and other positions as well. Those are just some that come to mind. Michigan State offered. Also, they've been offering guys that the Oregon State staff was in on. There's a fellow by the name of Houston Kahana Torres from Honolulu, 6'3", 280. Number one player in Hawaii. Same school as Rustin Young. Rustin Young committed to Michigan State, signed with Michigan State, 2024 class. Kahana Torres is 2025. Offers from Utah, Nebraska, Arizona. Michigan State offered him this week, or Oregon State had been recruiting him, so they're back in on him. There's also another one that Mahalik was in on from Lehi, Utah, by the name of Darius Afalava, 6'5", 280, 3-star recruit, number 3 player in Utah. Offers from LSU, Michigan, Oregon, Tennessee, Nebraska. Mahalik offered while he was at Oregon State. They've offered him again. In terms of catching back up, linebacker Charles White from Orchard Lake St. Mary's. Catching back up. Tight end Luca Gilbert. Where's Luca Gilbert from? He's from Ohio, right? Now, this guy is 6'7", 225, is a 4-star recruit from Ohio, number 147 in the country, number 6 in Ohio. Big-time Ohio player. Offers from Michigan and Ohio State. The chances of beating a Buckeye in Buckeye territory are slim, but Michigan State showed up, got involved with him there at Lakota West, I think it is. Might get a visit out of him, have to wait and see, but Michigan State planting some seeds and some relationships down there, showing up, showing that they would like to win some of those recruits at some point. You have to win on the field before you get someone like that in the meantime. But Brian Wozniak, an Ohioan, Michigan State's recruiting coordinator, tight ends coach, making this Ohio tight end a priority, and they're going to give it a shot. Wozniak was down there with Jonathan Smith. The same high school, Grant Bierman is a linebacker down there, 6'4", 205. So they show up at Lakota West. Luca Gilbert's a great tight end. Yeah, Ohio kid, probably a Buckeye eventually, but Michigan State getting in the ring with him. Meantime, there's a linebacker there, 6'4", 205, Grant Bierman. I've not watched any video of Grant Bierman yet, but he's got offers from Pittsburgh, Minnesota, and Duke. Minnesota offer. The Minnesota offer came from Joe Rossi when Rossi was coordinator at Minnesota. Now he's coordinator at Michigan State. So now Rossi's recruiting him out of Ohio. Jason Killeb had some really good quotes from Bierman saying that, Minnesota was great, but it was a long way away. He liked Rossi, and when Rossi went to Michigan State, that was an eye-opener. When Michigan State's recruiting him, Bierman's loving it. Michigan State's closer to home. Minnesota's been a good football program lately, but Michigan State has a stronger football brand than the Gophers. No disrespect to the Gophers. They've been good lately, especially when Rossi had that defense 2 years ago. But now Michigan State's getting in on Bierman, number 28 player in Ohio. So that's another player Michigan State's catching up on. They were never in it before. He's ranked number 32 in Ohio. And his quote to Jason Killeb at SpartanMag.com was talking about Grant Bierman, the linebacker from Lakota West in Ohio. He said, quote, "I had never really talked to Michigan State with the old coaching staff," unquote. So Michigan State hadn't recruited this guy. Rossi liked him. Minnesota liked him. Rossi comes to Michigan State. They're in on him. Smith told him they're going to recruit the state of Ohio hard. And you're seeing that. Not only is Smith saying it, he's got boots on the ground. He's down there with himself and some assistant coaches. So Bierman visited Minnesota last year for a game, but now look for Michigan State to be a good player, a strong player in the Bierman recruitment. He's planning to go to Michigan State's recruiting day, junior day on February 3rd. Question number 6, Todd from Duck Lake, Michigan. He says, where are we with 24 and 25 basketball recruiting? What are our needs? What do you expect us to go after here in the weeks and months ahead? All right, first of all, let's, how's that? That's the Beaumont Tower with Spartan Stadium in the background. Is that beautiful? I think it is. You guys can disagree. You're free to disagree here at SpartanMag.com, SpartanMag Live, and at the Underground Bunker. I left out the y'all. Old Tuck is saying, thank goodness. Old Tuck lives in Texas. He doesn't like hearing y'all. I'll say y'all once in a while, and it is organic. My mom was from Tennessee. My mama was from Tennessee. My dad was from the Tennessee-Kentucky border, the coal mines. So there was y'all spoken in my house growing up. So when I say it, it's not like I'm trying to come across. All right. Old Tuck says, Comp, do you think Coach Jonathan Smith will wear designer scarves and fake reading glasses on the Spartan Walk during football Saturdays? No. And I get your humor there. All right, now we're looking at YT Sparty. Making a comment about Booker. I agree. YT Sparty says, should we pull Garrick Norman's red shirt? It's interesting you should ask that. I've not heard anything about that, but yesterday, we're not supposed to report things we see in practice, but Norman was out couple of weeks ago with an injury of some sort, was in street clothes, not really street clothes, but athletic gear and not dressed for games. Yesterday in practice, he wasn't solely going with the scout team. Usually he's only with the scout team. Yesterday he was involved in some install on some things. And I think that's smart. I'm not saying that they're looking for him to be any help right now. I think they're getting him, and I didn't ask coaches about this, but I'm assuming with Garrick Norman, they were getting him some reps with the playing group just in case there's injuries. Like all of a sudden, let's say, Akins and Holloman get hurt, and things like that have happened. Norman's in. So I think they're getting him ready just in case. But I don't think there's any plans to pull the red shirt. But I saw some things where they're creating some options in case something like that happened. And Norman has a ways to go too. So don't expect him to come in and be like, that he'd be like a big help. Down the road he could be, but right now he's still just a freshman learning things and coming off a little bit of an injury. Oh, did I jump too far ahead? Let's see. Yeah, we don't have a lot of comments over here because a lot of you guys are at work probably. Not many comments in the comments section at all. Marco Rolo says Willhight would be a huge get. For those of you just joining us, we went over some video of Willhight, the defensive end from Tucson, Arizona, visited Michigan State last weekend, visiting Nebraska this weekend. Athletic defensive end. If you missed it, come back here and watch the stream, or you can probably rewind right now. We went over some video with him. Mark Webster says Michigan State could use a right end like that, defensive end like that. Haven't had a dominant rush end in a while. Thomas Madalena says, any update on Akins' ankle? Ankle looked good. He was in practice yesterday, and Akins looks fine. I'm sure it might be a little bit sore. He's gone through some treatment, but I don't see that being a hindrance for Friday's game at Wisconsin at all. JJ McKay from the Kiona says, just shared the Twitter link. Jim, hopefully can get some more people in here. Thanks a lot. Appreciate that. We don't have the numbers that we do when we go at night. I understand that, but maybe some people can catch up with it later. The numbers are usually down in the afternoon. Understand that, but it worked more into my schedule to do this one in the afternoon. Plus, it's interesting to see how it works. Plus, might do combinations of both going forward. I've been saying that for a long time, but that's the dream. All right, question 6, getting back to Todd from Duck Lake, Michigan. He says, what is Michigan State looking for with 24 and 2025 basketball recruiting? What are our needs? And who do you expect Michigan State's going to go after hard? All right, so 2024 Michigan State has commitments from Kurtang, nice, smooth shooter from the East Coast. He's committed. Jesse McCulloch is a post player from Ohio, 6'9.5". Has some skill, some ability, some toughness, has to work on all of that. And Jace Richardson, who looked really good. There were some games for his team, Miami, Columbus, Christopher Columbus, where it looked like he was getting frozen out. Not on purpose. He just playing with a lot of other guys that were like dominating the ball, and he wasn't getting the ball a lot. But when he moved to the point, he's got some point ability for sure. 6'3", number 49 player in the country. Some games when he wasn't getting the ball a lot to do what he can do, but here recently, you've seen more from Jace Richardson. I think he's excellent. Those three guys are good. They're still in on Bryson Tucker, a 2024 target. He's at IMG Academy, originally from Baltimore, 6'7", number 15 player in the country. I think he's number 13 now. Took an official visit to Michigan State in June, also official visit to Kansas. He's been very quiet with his recruitment, talking about Bryson Tucker, McDonald's All-American type of guy. He's been listening to the G League. He does not play AAU or grassroots basketball. Different type of approach there. He's been speaking with the G League. That there's some indications that there is an affinity there to just go pro and go straight to the G League. So Michigan State is recruiting against the NBA on this one. The NBA sponsors and owns the G League. And the NBA is really not doing anything to help college basketball. There's a lot of college coaches that think the NBA would like to replace college basketball. Silver is not a friend of the college game. So, Tucker can do what he wants and make money. Nothing against that kid. But the NBA, for the NBA having fed off of the college basketball feeder system for decades and decades and decades. I mean, when Patrick Ewing came to the NBA as a freshman, he had played as a rookie. He had played 4 years of college basketball. And Patrick Ewing, that would have been 1985, 86. At that point, Patrick Ewing as a college basketball player was probably one of the top 10 most famous basketball players in the country, including NBA players. In 86, you had Magic and Bird, Julius Erving, and you had, Kareem, and, a few others. But seriously, Patrick Ewing in college was more famous than a lot of NBA All-Stars, if you were around to know that. And he built his name and built his persona and his reputation in college, and the NBA benefited from him, and they've benefited from a lot of players over the years. Now I realize Kobe Bryant and LeBron James went straight to the NBA, great players. They were the face of the NBA in a lot of ways. And they don't, but so increasingly, and the international players now, the NBA, the college game helped build the NBA, but going forward, they've never stated this publicly, but the NBA doesn't think they need need college basketball. And in this instance, they're recruiting against college players with the formation of the G League. And G League is good for some players that don't want to be in college and shouldn't be in college. So it's great for that. But the meantime, in terms of some of the rules that are in place, it's not that some college coaches think they're flat out trying to kill college basketball. We'll see. All right, so there's those three, and I think Michigan State will hang tight with those three. They would like to add Tucker, but I don't think they're adding four. You get into 2005, Jerry Easter's the point guard from La Lumiere, originally from Ohio, I think. He was at Toledo Emmanuel Christian Academy previously. Now he's at La Lumiere. Number 43 in the country, number 8 point guard. This spring he'll be on all Ohio Red, we're expecting. And Michigan State's been all over him, and I think he's an excellent one at point guard. The Acuff kid originally from Detroit down at IMG. Kentucky's in on him and on some others, but it looks like Michigan State has prioritized Easter. We will cover that at SpartanMag. Trey McKinney, Orchard Lake St. Mary's, 6'4", strong guard, number 13 player in the country. Originally from Flint, now at Orchard Lake St. Mary's. Michigan State offered in June of 2022. He's visited Michigan State a few times, including the football game September 2nd of this year, or the year before, actually. And the first day of contact, June 25th, 2023, Michigan State was in contact with him. Thomas Kelly, Michigan State assistant coach. Key is the lead recruiter for Trey McKinney. Michigan State's made him a priority. There's some obstacles there with Michigan State trying to recruit him. Michigan State's going to have to overcome. Sometimes those things can be overcome. Hey, Michigan State had to overcome some obstacles recruiting a lot of people, including Mateen Cleaves. And that all worked out real well. Had some obstacles with Charlie Bell. All worked out really well. So Michigan State's working on it with McKinney. We'll see what goes on there. Orchard Lake St. Mary's has some interesting games coming up. They'll play top-ranked East Lansing here real soon. A lot of people think that East Lansing and Orchard Lake St. Mary's are the top two contenders for the Division I state championship. East Lansing High School has KJ Torbert. Went and watched him 2 weeks ago. Sophomore. Michigan State's not offered yet. Slim guy. Jumps well. Nice scoring ability. Has some work to do. I kind of think Michigan State might be offering him here in the meantime. Great to hear from David. We're going to go ahead and ban him. He's all excited about Go Blue, but Michigan, had a good football team. We might get into that later. But basically, they were a disgrace to college football this year. Disgrace. Led by a dishonorable man. So if you want to support that, that's great. And, hey, they won football games. And I respect the way Michigan recruited, aside from the illegal contact with J.J. McCarthy, which helped get them a key player. If you think that didn't have an impact, then why did Michigan do it? But did a good job with evaluation, player development, balance, physicality, run game, defense, all those things. Got a lot of respect for that. The rest of it was a disgrace, or most of the rest of it, the way they handled victory in some respects was un-Schembechler-like. And I think there's a question in here about whether I think Michigan State, what kind of penalty that they're going to get. We'll get to that later. But Trey McKinney, Jerry Easter, Jordan Scott 6'5" out of Virginia, number 81 in the On3 industry ranking, 6'5", good skill. Doug Wojcik was there on Monday at his school. Izzo's been there. They're clearly making him a priority. Took an official visit to Michigan State September 8th. Michigan State's in there. Florida State, Washington, Maryland. Michigan State's looking like they're running pretty good for him. Jordan Scott, 6'5" out of Virginia. So McKinney, Easter, Jordan Scott. They've been in on Davion Hanna, 6'5" out of Milwaukee. He was at Michigan State for the Central Michigan football game along with Connor Stallions. Number 36 player in the country. Michigan State offered on September 1st. That's going to be a difficult one, but there might not be room for all those guys. Not sure about big men. Let's see here. Some people are thinking that maybe they could bring in as many as 4 or 5 recruits. I'm not sure because, and they've been on Trent Sisley too, 6'7", 200 out of Santa Claus, Indiana, number 33 player in the country. His own assistants they visited him this winter. He'll also visit Purdue. I think that's an unofficial visit, February 10th. He visited Michigan State September 1st, way back in 2022. Attended Michigan State versus Purdue last year in January. Trent Sisley. Michigan State reached out to him the first day of junior contact on June 15th, 2023. 6'7". So Michigan State's in on some taller wings when you talk about Sisley. I don't know if it's Sisley or Sisley. I've watched some video of him, but I've not heard his name pronounced. I apologize about that. Hannah at 6'5", Jordan Scott at 6'5". McKinney's a strong guy at 6'4". Michigan State right now is caught with a little bit undersized on the perimeter. They want to get away from that a little bit. In terms of big men, Nico Bundalo, 6'11", 195, number 23 player in the country from Hudson, Ohio, Western Reserve Academy. Michigan State offered in September. Left-handed shooter, left-handed shot blocker, which when you have that kind of height with a left hand, a lot of great shot blockers happen to be left-handed because that's the shooting arm. And he's pretty natural with some of that stuff. Good face-up skill, face-up shooter, even off of one bounce. Needs to improve his explosiveness, and that can happen with big men. They can add explosiveness as they turn 17, 18. I've seen it happen before. As for a left-hander, he's got a little bit of a righty hook. Michigan State's been in on him. We'll see what happens there. There were reports on On3 that Kai Rogers out of Milwaukee, 6'10", we're talking about 2025s right here, that he wants to get offered by Michigan State, wants to visit Michigan State. Right now, Marquette and Iowa State are recruiting him the hardest. Number 65 player in the country, 6'10", solid player, and Michigan State's going to wait and see on that. Now, here's the deal. Michigan State is in on several of these players. But does Michigan State, Izzo made a comment earlier this week about he's going to adjust, and he will adjust, and he has adjusted to many things in basketball over the years, including the transfer portal thing. And he's lamented the fact this year that they've had problems with the age difference, something he didn't really anticipate because everybody's new to the transfer portal era. And he says not many players are playing that many freshmen. Now, Wisconsin plays a freshman, comes off the bench. North Carolina's getting a lot of mileage out of a freshman guard, point guard, nice player. But he says fewer teams are playing freshmen. More teams have gone to the transfer portal. More teams are older. Arizona, they ran into that. Arizona had picked off San Diego State, one of their best players, an older guy, and some others. And there's other teams around. Illinois has done that. They go to instead of bringing in a freshman and developing one, teams are, instead of bringing in 4 freshmen and developing an entire class, they'll bring in 2 freshmen and 2 transfers. So Michigan State has seen this year when Michigan State is going against teams that are older, and it's bothering Izzo, but that's the way it is. So Izzo's been reluctant to go to the transfer portal. They brought in Joey Hauser years ago, back before the portal. And Tyson Walker, I think, was the first year of the portal. You can go back to Bryn Forbes. That was before the portal. Those guys are just transfers. Forbes was transferring back home. Izzo's been reluctant to go full bore into the portal. He's been more of a Dabo Swinney type of mindset. I'd rather build my guys, not recruit over their heads, and build a culture and a program. That's a noble undertaking. But in this day and age, I think he's not mentioned this to me, but he's kind of hinted at it here and there. He's bothered to compete against it. He sees that he's competing against older teams. The old mantra coming out of Villanova's success was get old and stay old. Villanova was very good at that. Michigan State's been trying to do that. They've got an older team with Walker and Hogard. Akins is a junior. Michigan State's starting 5 is older than the Detroit Pistons starting 5, I think. So they are old, but there are other teams that are older. So getting Booker on the court, getting Carr on the court, the freshman mistakes seem a little more glaring these days than they've been in the past because a lot of teams don't have freshman mistakes because there's a lot of teams out there not playing freshmen. Now, Indiana's got freshmen. There's exceptions. So Izzo, he's been against the portal thing the last couple of years, but I think that's going to change. I think they're going to dip back into the portal. So do you really want to bring in 5 guys in 2025? Or do you bring in 3 and go to the portal for your big men? When you look at the big men, yeah, they like, they like Rogers a little bit. They like Bundello a lot. They had him on campus. They probably take Bundello, but when you're looking in the future, if you can keep Kohler, and Kohler's a good kid, loves it here, but he's got to get some minutes because this is the transfer portal era. And if you think people aren't talking to him, I'm sure they're talking to him. So when you're talking about 2025 class, Kohler's got next year, then those guys come in the next year. After that, Kohler would have 1 year, Cooper would have 1 year left, Booker would have 2 years left compared to these guys, talking about the 2025 big men. Or do you just kind of roll the dice that you're going to look in the portal and people are going to be there? Those things are still being ironed out. So that's a long answer to your question about what's going on with basketball recruiting. It's complicated because it's not what it used to be. You have to factor in the portal. And Izzo made a comment a couple days ago that he's gotten texts from players. Are you going to have availability here or there? So, and he's not comfortable with that. But it's a different game. And he's going after his second national championship at some point. Wants to get there with Fears and some of these other guys. If not, he still likes coaching, but the coaching game is leaving a lot of people. It's not that people are leaving college game. The college game is leaving them because of some of these rules that the NCAA put in. And Izzo still complains about Jay Billis in that category. All right. Anyway, I'm undecided on some of those things, but I understand a lot of them as well. Question 7, Ernie from Denver, Colorado says, could you summarize what you've heard from current players and recruits on their early impressions of Jonathan Smith and his staff? They like him. He's a genuine guy. He's pragmatic. He's to the point. I just keep hearing positive things. I'll give you an example. Where was Alexander McPherson, defensive end, visited this week? Jason Killip had the story at SpartanMag.com, doing a great job covering it. And we'd love for you to become a magger. Alex McPherson, IMG, Florida kid, defensive end, 6'4", 240, offers from Florida Atlantic, South Florida, Indiana, UNLV. His recruitment is just getting going. He came in and visited, had some contacts. Jordan Hall, you may have seen the picture of him with Jordan Hall. Jordan Hall is from IMG as well, former teammate. McPherson's quote about Jonathan Smith. This is from Jason Killip's story at SpartanMag.com. My first impression of Jonathan Smith was that he was very down to earth and a genuine man. I don't know how else to explain it very well, just genuine. I would describe it that way. He meant everything he said in terms of me being a great fit for their program and that they'd love for me to be part of the future of Michigan State. It felt like it was true and not just another coach just saying that, unquote. So that's Alexander McPherson talking about Jonathan Smith. You're going to see feelings like that over and over and over. You've seen Jonathan Smith at his press conferences. You probably get a feel for it. That's who he is. It's somewhere, it reminds me of D'Antonio quite a bit. It's like D'Antonio with a little higher RPMs. And D'Antonio was a defense guy. Smith's an offense guy. But there's some sincerity there. It's genuine. It's about football. It's meat and potatoes. It's sincerity. And it can be effective with a lot of players, and it should be. So that's what I'm hearing from recruits. That's what Jason Killip's hearing from recruits and from current players as well. I've heard from some players that they've had film meetings with their position coaches. I've heard from a couple that the film meetings about their own play was more extensive and constructive than anything that they had seen from in their careers, which means their previous staff. So I think it's playing really well there. All right, question number 2 from Ernie in Denver, Colorado. He said, if you had to rank the new assistant coaches by their recruiting prowess, how would they be ranked? You know, I typed in an answer for this, and I think you're asking about recruiting, and I was just going by my answer is mostly relating to overall coaching ability. But if you go position by position, Demetrius Martin is supposed to be a really good recruiter. I've talked to some people that have been recruited by him, and he's recruited for the Pac-12, and he keeps getting jobs in the Pac-12. He's very well respected out there. So he's going to recruit well. They'll turn him loose a little bit in the Midwest, but his home base in recruiting is the West Coast. And I think Michigan State right now has a chance to get something done in California more so than they have in the past. And I'm not saying that it's going to be all Californians, but 2 or 3 Californians per recruiting class, I would think that that's possible, and good ones too, when it comes to evaluation or stars, rankings, and so forth. Why California? 1 is Demetrius Martin. 2, there's never been a better time to recruit in the state of California out of the Big Ten than right now, with USC and UCLA going to the Big Ten. California has become Big Ten territory. At least Southern California is. It's not totally that way mindset-wise, but increasingly it's going to be that way. The 2 conferences are the SEC and the Big Ten. Those are the conferences you're going to want to be a part of. There'll be exceptions. There'll be guys that go to Arizona to play in the Big 12. There'll be guys that go to Stanford and Cal for a lot of good reasons to play in the ACC. But the Big Ten is going to be the place to be if you're a big-time player in Southern California. Demetrius Martin happens to have a lot of contacts up and down the coast. West Coast chilling. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. That's silly. But Demetrius Martin can rock it up and down the coast. And he's got a chance to recruit in a way that Michigan State's never really been able to do in California. They've gotten players here and there, but it could be different. That's not going to be the cornerstone of recruiting. It's going to be one of the tent poles. There's tents hold up different poles hold up a tent. You got the Michigan tent pole, you got the Ohio tent pole, you got the Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Illinois, Midwest, Georgia, Texas, Florida, California tent poles. And Demetrius Martin's going to be able to do that, unlike any assistant coach they've had that I can think of. Michigan State's tried to do some things out there. Pat Morris tried to do some things out there years ago. Limited success here and there. Martin's, even if just a couple, because you're not going to be recruiting 30 guys. 25-man classes, I'm not sure we're going to see 25-man classes much in the future. You're going to see people get an 18-man class plus 7 transfers. 2 California guys per year can have an impact. Joe Rossi, linebackers coach, defensive coordinator, he's a worker. Reminds me of Narduzzi out there in Northeast Ohio, showing up, recruiting hard. He recruited hard when he was at Minnesota. So, compare that to Hazleton. Hazleton recruited Jordan Hall. That was a big-time recruit. And Jordan Hall's showing a lot of earmarks of being a great leader. He's going to be a plus player in this program. If you're a Michigan State fan, you have to really appreciate the fact that Jordan Hall played here as a true freshman, stayed here, never showed much indication of wanting to get in the portal and go elsewhere. Getting a lot of support from his mother back home, and he stayed through the coaching change. And I heard he did some really great things leadership-wise to try to keep things together during the tumultuous 2023 season in a lot of ways. So if you're a Michigan State fan, Jordan Hall is a guy you should be loving. And Hazleton recruited him. But Hazleton didn't do a whole lot else recruiting-wise. They got in the portal for linebackers, Brule, Winman, those type of guys. But linebacker recruiting, his position, not much. Not much. Rossi, there's going to be some of that. Recruiting-wise, Rossi's going to recruit more than Hazleton. Although I give Hazleton credit for Jordan Hall. That's a big one. But down in and down out, Rossi's going to be a better recruiter. Cornerbacks, Demetrius Martin. Instead of Salgado, down in and down out, better recruiter. Salgado, good position coach, NFL guy, came in, worked at it, but he's not Demetrius Martin when it comes to recruiting. Salgado's a good coach. Martin's a good coach. Keith Bonifaz, the running backs coach, former recruiting coordinator at other stops, hearing good things about him as a recruiter. Ephraim Reed was a good recruiter. I'm not sure Ephraim Reed had all the freedom to offer everyone that he wanted to. Saeed Khalif was the former general manager at Michigan State. There was a time when Saeed Khalif, from what I heard, tried to tell all the assistant coaches who they can offer. And some of the assistant coaches are like, F off. I'm going to recruit my own room. Others, younger coaches like Reed, maybe were like, taking it at face value. That's as more things were delegated to Khalif for a while, for better, for worse. Ephraim Reed, someone like Darius Taylor, the running back from Walled Lake Western, Michigan State got in on him late after he committed to Minnesota. Had a really great freshman year at Minnesota. Wanted to be recruited by Michigan State. I don't think he was at Michigan State's camp. Michigan State got in late, too late, didn't get him. Was that an Ephraim Reed thing? Was that a Khalif thing? I don't know. But Ephraim Reed, heard good things about him as a running backs coach. I was impressed with him in a lot of ways. He was hired at South Alabama. I kind of expected him to get a better job than that. Maybe it just wasn't the right time and place, but I think he's got a good future. I think Ephraim Reed was good. Not sure he was totally able to totally spread his wings and go full flight in all areas while he was here, but Bonifaz will be able to, and I'm expecting him to be a good recruiter. Heard good things about him. Mihalchik, the offensive line coach, he's recruiting a lot of offensive linemen. You're seeing a little bit of a hybrid recruiting there. He'll have his area, but he's also involved in a lot of offensive linemen, including, getting involved with Strayhorn now down in Florida. It seems like Mihalchik is not necessarily just area recruiting, but he's also recruiting offensive linemen as well. That's kind of hybrid recruiting in terms of some coaches have a specific region, and then under Tucker, coaches had a position, and they recruited their position coast to coast. I've spoken with some people at the recruiting office at Michigan State that think that a hybrid of that can be most effective. And we've spoken with people that feel that way. Now, if you're recruiting if it's area regional recruiting, you've got your people initially, but then you're going to follow up and try to help finish guys at your position. That's kind of a hybrid thing. D'Antonio did some of that. Narduzzi had his Northeast Ohio, Pennsylvania thing, but he also recruited coast to coast all the defensive players when he was coordinator. I could see Rossi doing that, and Mihalchik is already doing that. I think you'll see that across the board. Defensive line coach Legi Sui Aonoa has a great reputation as a communicator and a recruiter. He's gotten involved in Florida with Bonifaz, so that's new territory for him. I don't know if he recruited there for Oregon State in the past or not, but Michigan State needs some Florida recruiters. He's in there. He's a very look forward to interviewing him in the future. Really comes across in the videos as a good, solid, relatable person, and I could see him doing well recruiting-wise. In terms of comparing him to other defensive line coaches Michigan State has had, Michigan State's had 4 different defensive line coaches the last 4 years. Ron Burton was a good recruiter in his prime in the D'Antonio years. It got a little funny later on, and then they had the guy from Stanford recruited for a year. I've forgotten their names already. Different defensive line coaches. So they've been spinning their wheels, their defensive line. I think Su'i Anoa is going to be entrenched and over the long haul will provide better recruiting than Michigan State's had in the defensive line the last couple of years. I realized that Michigan State recruited well defensive end 2 years ago. Tucker's last year. By Job was a highly ranked guy, good athlete, still needs to learn to play football. DePape, good film, good ability, needs to show that he's accountable. Jalen Thompson coming in for Detroit, 4-star, ranked beneath those guys, but had a much better impact as a true freshman, shows leadership ability. That was a good one. So Michigan State did recruit well at defensive end. Deron Reynolds was the coach last year coming in from Stanford. The year before that was the guy that went back. I've already forgotten. But defensive tackle recruiting was non-existent in recent years. Van Sumeren was a 4-star, injured last year. The year before that, redshirted, has a chance to do something. Might turn out to be serviceable, but defensive tackle recruiting has been non-existent. So top to bottom defensive line recruiting has been hit and miss. Had the one good year of defensive ends. Year in and year out with Su'i Anoa, I expect it to be better. And I think that there'll be more into defensive tackle recruiting, which is one of the more difficult positions to recruit. Blue Adams, very good reputation as a recruiter. Brian Wozniak, recruiting coordinator for the team. Tight ends, Ohio roots. I look for Wozniak to be a better recruiter than Gilmore. Gilmore knew the game, knew the craft, but recruiting-wise, player development, no disrespect, but it just kind of seemed like semi-retirement for him. Apologize about that, but just not sure what was going on there. Then they brought in the guy from Norfolk State as a tight end. Parachek was a good recruit. Parachek out of was it Chelsea or Dexter? Somewhere down there. Like him a lot, came in as a true freshman, got some playing time last year. I think he's got a good future. So that might turn out to be a good one as he develops under Wozniak and these other guys. The tight end position was hugely important at Oregon State. It was very important for Jay Johnson also. He always said tight end was the MVP of the offense. Now, really, quarterback's going to be the MVP of the offense, but he tried to place a lot of importance on tight ends. And tight end recruiting and player development never really supplied tight ends to Jay Johnson. We saw what Malik Carr was, had a lot of ability, but was just kind of not sure the lights were always on there. So tight end, I expect it's going to be a different level of accountability and attention to detail and player development there, and it's going to be a positive. And I think so when you're comparing tight end recruiting and tight end everything, I think that's going to be a plus here going forward. At the quarterbacks, Lindgren, quarterback's position, offensive coordinator Jay Johnson. Lindgren does what he did at Oregon State, a lot under center, a lot of physicality, a lot of 2 tight ends, established the power run, play action, take shots deep, play action, counter boot, drags and waggles. They do what they do, and they did it pretty well at Oregon State the last 2 years. Jay Johnson, the identity was not always probably what he wanted, and I'm not sure exactly what he wanted. They ran into some struggles. Offensive line coach Mihalchik, very good with his recruiting. Kapilovic, I thought, was good with recruiting. I thought that he worked hard. He was relentless. They recruited pretty well, won some recruiting battles, but the offensive line never really gained traction like he expected. like a lot of us expected. So it never quite got there. He's at Baylor now. He'll have a chance to get it going there, but he worked at it, never quite came around. So you're asking me about recruiting. I think up and down the list, Martin's a plus, Rossi's a plus. We'll see with Bonafa. He's good, but I thought Reed had capabilities too, but I think he might have been curtailed a little bit. Mahalik is, player development-wise, evaluation-wise, is going to be strong recruiting-wise. I thought Kapilovic was good. I think he'll be good. Sueanoa is going to be an upgrade. Blue Adams is good. Corner recruiting with Travaris Tillman, who went to Georgia Tech. He's here for 1 year. They got rid of him. Tucker was cornerbacks coach for a year. Tucker got rid of himself. Tucker was not happy with how he coached that year, frankly. And then they went with Salgado, who's a good on-the-field coach, but was new, had not coached in college for a while. Went to work a little bit in recruiting, but he's not Blue Adams when it comes to recruiting. You bring in Demetrius Martin, he's not a Demetrius Martin. So cornerbacks, defensive backs, recruiting is going to be better. Harlan Barnett recruited well to an extent, but he was not in his prime in terms of recruiting. So Adams and Martin are going to be a plus over defensive backs recruiting. Wozniak is going to be a plus over tight ends recruiting. I think up and down the board. And usually when there is a new staff, you will see an uptick in recruiting. Forgive the word, but relentlessness. You'll see an uptick in recruiting effort and exuberance and all those things. Saw that at the beginning of the Sabin era when D'Antonio was a young coach, when Jim Bowman was a young coach. Who'd they have? Dean Pease. He wasn't much of a recruiter back then. He's an older guy. Glenn Pyers for 1 year. Charlie Baggett was a veteran coach at the time. Retained Pat Shermer, hard recruiter at the time as a young coach. I'm going back to 95. Gary Trangle was the offensive coordinator. He didn't recruit much. He recruited here locally. They gave him Lansing. He was like full-time coordinator. Was not asked to recruit much. He was an older coach at the time. But they hit the ground running hard, did what they could, and Michigan State, Sabin had a name back then, but not like he does now, of course. And they kind of hit their head on their ceiling a little bit. They were kind of a top 25 recruiting outfit. And Sabin, to his words, he thought Michigan State was always going to be number 2. And they were never going to be able to recruit like he wanted to. So he quit, because Nick Saban is a quitter. Sorry to say it. He quit. He wanted to go someplace where the tail could wag the dog, where he could run the university. Went to LSU, and LSU was turnkey with talent more talent than you could get at Michigan State. Now, if he'd stayed at Michigan State and had a lot of success, in time, the flywheel would have eventually got spinning like it did with Izzo, and he would have been able to recruit better. But he didn't want to. He wanted a shortcut to LSU. Nothing against him. He did great there. Great coach. No qualms with that. Good professional decision. Went to the NFL, and they wanted to sign Drew Brees at Miami. The GM didn't do it. And among other things, he saw that he could not guarantee that his roster was better than everybody else's. So he quit. Went back to Alabama, a place where the tail could wag the dog. Money was no object in a lot of areas. And he put together the greatest run in the history of college football coaching, right? And he fixed it to where his roster was better than the opponent 99% of the time over the course of 150 games. That's what he wanted. That's what he got, and that's good. But when he was at Michigan State, he saw the limitations, and he left. So, hey, good decision. D'Antonio was aware of those limitations, and he worked with it. He came to Michigan State and said, this is a destination job. This is my last job. Worked with it. Finished number 3 in the country in 2013. Might have had the best team in the country that year. If there had been a playoff, might have won the national championship. I don't know. He thinks they would have. I'm not sure. Florida State was pretty good. But put it together with a couple of 4 stars and great evaluation, 3 stars and 2 stars. Now, did they just roll a lot of Yahtzees? Le'Veon Bell, Kirk Cousins, some of those guys that were 2-star recruits ended up being all-pro type of guys, NFL all-star type of guys. Was that luck or great evaluation and player development? Did they just all of a sudden get a lot of good ones all at the same time? Could they have repeated that? I don't know. tried to, lost some coaches. Other coaches, did other coaches have the same recruiting exuberance and evaluation after 2014 and 15 that they had earlier? Maybe not. My point is, early on, with early coaching staffs, I've seen it before, Sabin staff, D'Antonio staff, and even Tucker staff in the first 18 months, where you got a new job, you hit recruiting hard. Maintaining it can be difficult. It's easier to maintain it at a program like LSU, Georgia, that has the turnkey talent right on their doorstep. So as they get going, but right now it's looking really good. Question 8, Jay Bannon from Sterling Heights. Thank you, by the way, Jay Bannon, for letting me know via text that the microphone was off earlier. And I've had some filibusters here today, and I've gone too long. We've gone two hours already. Let me go ahead and buzz through these real quick because I don't want to eat up your entire work day. Some of you, they're playing hooky. Some of you guys are retired. God bless you. All right, John J. Bannon from Sterling Heights, he says, which of the new transfers do you see making an instant contribution in the fall? How do you see them making that contribution? In what ways? And he says the quarterback spot is probably a given. Yes, it's probably a given. Aiden Childs, he's going to be given a chance, the true sophomore, to really be the guy. He's got all kinds of talent that's going to be interesting to watch. Jake Velling coming in as a tight end of the year in the Pac-12. He's going to hit the ground running as an excellent tight end, especially in this offense. He knows the coaches. They know him. They know how to utilize him. Offensive line also, Tanner Miller coming in from Oregon State. Venerable starter there, leader, wants to stick with these guys. He can play some center or guard. It's going to be interesting to see whether he lands at center or guard. In the spring, the coaches, they'll take a look at Dallas Fincher. They'll take a look at Dellinger, maybe Vandermark. They'll look to see what they have at the center position, and they may go with Tanner Miller at center. It's going to be really interesting. Luke Newman, the transfer from Holy Cross. I was watching his film last night against Lafayette, and we might move that over to SpartanMag, the Underground Bunker, later. I can't do it here because I think there's copyright with that film. But Luke Newman, 6'4", like 210, left tackle for Holy Cross. 6'4" is not ideal height. Kind of a square body guy, but quick feet, and some physicality, and low center, gets low and changes direction. Luke Newman is good. That's why he wants to come to Michigan State, try to prove it at the Big Ten level. He has sights of maybe making the NFL. I don't know what scouts think about him, but I'm not surprised that Michigan State went ahead and said, yeah, we like that guy. Originally from Brother Rice, wanted to go back to the state of Michigan. His film is nice. He's going to be a senior. He's a veteran. And I'm trying to think who he reminded me of. He's wearing number 71. He's a Brother Rice kid. I'm thinking, does he remind me of Gordy Nybilski? No, I think he's a little quicker than Nybilski. Those of you that go back to the early 2000s. He reminds me of Fo Finoti a little bit. Finoti was 6'4", tackle, quick enough to play tackle at 6'4", rugged. This guy's rugged. I know it's in the Patriot League, but I'm watching him against Lafayette. Lafayette had some guys, they're defensive ends. They look like the type of guys that you'd see in the MAC, similar. And Luke Newman can play. He might be able to play tackle. Michigan State has Brandon Baldwin. They've got Ethan Boyd. Newman can play with those guys. Reminds me of Finoti. He could easily go in and play guard, but his feet are quick. It's not like he can really kick out with long strides. He just gets him. He gets him on the ground, and he's got this balance where he strikes real quickly to make first contact and stay low and all those things. I like Luke Newman. So you've got Vandermark at guard. I think Newman. This year Samac and Duplain, God bless them, good kids, gave it their all, but they didn't quite take it to another level this year like a lot of people expected. They gave effort, and I give them credit. They came and they were good team spokesmen at the press conferences when things were not going well. Great respect to them for doing the best they could to represent the program, but never quite took that next step. I know Newman was playing against Lafayette, and he's playing the Patriot League. I think Newman's better than Samac and Duplain. Those guys, Samac and Duplain, maybe physically stronger, maybe, but I'm not sure. Newman is good. He could be a guard, and he could be good. He could be tackle. He's better than Keyshawn Blackstock. I was impressed with Newman. I've not watched Quinn Dunnigan yet out of Middle Tennessee State. Second team, all-conference and Conference USA. Jordan Turner, I've watched him a little bit. I've got to go back and watch him again. Inside linebacker at Wisconsin. Wayne Matthews, I watched him a little bit at Old Dominion. He's solid. I don't think he's better than Brule. So those guys will get on the field. The thing about these transfers is they've all played some football. It's not like they're just like blanket offering a bunch of guys that haven't played, like what happened to the previous staff. Previous staff got rid of 20 guys. You guys are not the right size. We're going to bring in these 20 guys, 10 of which have never played. But they must be better than these guys. Well, it turned out they weren't. These 7 or 8 transfers have played. And I talked to Smith about that. I asked Smith about that in the press conference last week, and I didn't get a chance to really follow up. But the importance of transfer portal recruiting, it's a big part of roster development and acquisition these days. Everybody knows that. And a lot of times transfer player evaluations and decisions have to be made so quickly. Like in 1 or 2 days looking at film, all right, that guy's in the portal, we got to move fast. Do we want him? Yes. How bad do we want him? A lot. Okay, boom, move on it. Sabin was talking about that with one of his former players at Alabama. He said when he was recruiting in the older days, he knew everything about all the high school guys that they recruited. When you start bringing in transfers, you just inherently know less about them as their personalities. You see it on film. You might talk a little bit about it to a high school coach, but you got to move on those guys quickly because transfer portal recruiting happens quickly. Guys enter the portal first week of December. They're making decisions in 2 weeks, and you've got a staff of aides and assistants doing evaluations of 1,000 guys in the portal. Difficult. So, Luke Newman, Dunnigan, Turner, guys that have been on the field. I don't know, nothing against Marquis Lowry or Kari Crump, but I don't know what, Tunmisi Adeleye. Those guys had 0 film. And, Michigan State's bringing them in. Okay, that's fine. Nothing against them. But there were some others that had dropped to second string, like Donald Williams at Alabama and Chester Kimbrough at Florida. Bogle at Florida he had 9 career sacks, I think, at Florida. Was kind of, borderline second stringer guys. That's why those guys were leaving. Harold Joyner at Auburn had a couple of plays here and there. That's why they left those places, because they were second and third string. Those guys were just guys. Nothing against them. They did their best. But these players Michigan State's bringing in are proven starters at different programs. Now, Turner might not have meshed as well with the coaching change at Wisconsin. I'm not sure. But I think there's less blind darts at a dartboard than there were. Question 9, Fishin' Dave, normally from Midland, Michigan. He reports that he's ice fishing right now in Michigan. He's in the UP. Let me see if I can find this. No. Let me see. I'm looking for a pronunciation. Please hold on. JB is saying Old Dominion, Middle Tennessee State, Lafayette, good Lord. Let me give you a little tip, JB. If you want to go transfer portal, guys, now it's good to go if you're comparing it to Ohio State bringing in linemen from Alabama and Michigan State salivating over kids from Lafayette. All right, I'm going to go ahead and ban this guy. All right, so he's talking about Ohio State. Yeah, Ohio State is bringing in guys from Alabama. Ohio State is on the quarters system, and they're able to bring in a guy right now to get into school right now. Michigan State's in semesters. School started 15 days ago. Michigan State is not allowing players to come in from the transfer portal right now from Washington or Alabama or Michigan right now, if they have an opening, because school's already started. Ohio State's on quarters is different. And yeah, the Ohio State football brand is different than Michigan State's. It is different. It is strong. So they can go and get kids from Alabama. In terms of Holy Cross and Lafayette, yeah, I mean, Newman's pretty good. Not saying he's great. But you look at the NFL, there's a lot of players from, I was looking at players from the state of Michigan who are in the NFL because there's more players from the city of Detroit than any other city in the country in opening day rosters this year. More Detroiters than players from Los Angeles, more than Houston, more than Miami. That surprised me. Jonathan Smith, aware of it, he's interested in that. I clicked on it and I looked at all the players from Detroit that are in the NFL. I'd recognize one name. Okay, I remember him. Okay, Will Golston, I remember him. There'll be some name I didn't recognize. Guy went to the University of Buffalo. There'll be another guy, I don't recognize that name. He went to Ferris State. Another guy, Grand Valley. Another guy, Ferris State. Another guy, Central Michigan. In the NFL, there's players who go to schools, maybe not Holy Cross, but schools that are off the beaten path. Luke Newman might be one of those type of players. And JB, whatever school you follow, if you turn a blind eye to those, you can actually get players from those schools and do well. I'm guessing JB is a Michigan fan and Michigan's good this year. They cheated. Should be an asterisk. They were a disgrace to college football. They did. Harbaugh, if he didn't know about it, he should have known about it. And he's such a control freak, you can guarantee he knew about it. He is a dishonorable man. If that's what you're into, that's great. You cheat, you get caught, you deny, deflect, claim you're a victim, and then call for immunity. If that's what you want to be associated with, knock yourself out. Good football team, played well. Didn't have to cheat, but cheating didn't make them upset-proof, not only this year, but the year before, 2022, when they played Michigan State. That game, it scores, 13-7 at halftime. 10-7, something like that. Michigan State's down inside the 10-yard line. They go for it on fourth down. You watch that play and watch what Michigan did on defense. A lot of people complain about the play call for Michigan State, but knowing what we know now about Michigan knew what the play call was. Their defense got there, stopped them on fourth down, had a big impact on the game. Second half, Michigan took over, had good players, but Peyton Thorne was asked about it this year at a press conference at Auburn after the cheating allegations came out. And they're not allegations. I think it's pretty much proven, isn't it? I mean, Michigan was all set to fight those allegations and bring in their high-powered lawyers to get the temporary restraining order to allow Jim Harbaugh to coach against Ohio State. And then the Big Ten presented them with something. And that day, Michigan said, okay, we're not fighting anymore. And by the way, we're firing our linebackers coach. Not sure what that is. It might come out. It might not come out. But when they decided not to fight it, weren't they accepting the penalty? And if you accept a penalty, is it no longer allegations? Anyway, people saying it allegedly. I don't think it's allegedly. I think everybody knows it. I think people see the video. They see the photos. They see what's going on. There's a paper trail. There's a digital trail. I don't think it's allegations. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But when you're cheating like that, and you know what the other team is doing on X number of plays per game, it helps you become upset-proof against Illinois, against Michigan State in 2022 and other games, maybe the Ohio State games too. I think a lot of people will agree that Michigan did better in the college football playoff this year because of their experience in the college football playoff last year against TCU, the year before that against Georgia. So how did they get to the playoff in 2021 and 2022? 2022 and 2023. Those first couple of years, being upset proof via cheating helped them gain that experience, and the program tunnel vision to take it a step further. Those experiences getting there helped them win it this time. How did they get there in the other ones? Hey, that 2022 game, Peyton Thorne said, they asked him about it when he was at Auburn, when all these things came out, allegations or proof or whatever about sign stealing. And Thorne at Auburn said, yeah, last year when we played Michigan, we came off the field scratching our head a couple times. I was scratching my head like, man, how did the defense know that? Several times. That 2022 game, it was 10-7 at halftime, 13-7. Michigan State was playing well. Keon Coleman had a dominant first half. Michigan did a good job in the second half. But were they cheating to win that game? I think they were. I can't prove it. I think they were. Now, there's some laptops things going on. We will see if the NCAA gets into that. I'm not sure if the NCAA sees laptops or not, but there's some, we will see if there's any kind of cloud theft. I mean, you saw what the Alabama player Isaiah Bond said prior to the Michigan game when he said that they were not using laptops because they were paranoid that Michigan had access to their laptops. The catapult system, they said they had not seen any, there had not been any breaches, so we'll have to wait and see. I'm not saying that they did it. I don't know. Is it possible the NCAA could find that? Is it possible? I don't know. Could the NCAA find that there were members of the coaching staff that had practice video on those laptops? I don't know. If they find that, that's a problem. If they find that helped them establish that record. So JB, if you're proud of that, then that says a lot about you as a person because it was a disgrace to college football. All right, let's go back here to what questions were we at? Oh, Fish and Dave. I was going to look up a pronunciation. Here we go. Here it is. He's at Brever. He's at, let's see. Yeah. He doesn't give me no pronunciation though. All right. He's up near, I think it's Moran, Michigan. And that's like, it's like between Highway 2 and Newberry, Upper Peninsula. Fish and Dave is up there ice fishing in the UP. So God bless him. And I kind of wouldn't mind being up there right now my damn self. Anyway, he says, it seems like a lot of screws have been tightening in the turnover area when it comes to Michigan State basketball. Michigan State is turning the ball over less as a team. What's going on with that, he asks. Well, Michigan State basketball, which has a big chance to get a big win on Friday and maybe a chance to mop the floor with Michigan on Tuesday. We'll wait and see. I mean, I thought Michigan looked pretty good earlier in the year when they beat St. John's. Looked pretty good against Memphis, and the wheels have fallen off. We'll see. But Michigan with a really good chance here in the next 7 days to really to get some things accomplished and land some blows. We'll see what happens. Turnover rate. Right now, it's the lowest turnover rate of the Izzo era. Lowest turnover rate of the Izzo era. Now, how is that possible? Hogard, with experience, he had some turnovers earlier in his career, less of that now. He still has a little rash of it here and there. Trey Holloman, up until the last game, ranked number 1 in the country in turnover margin. So he's coming off the bench, playing some quarterback, doing some good things. Jaden Akins is basically only shooting. He's getting open and shooting. He's not doing much in terms of, he's not trying to do too much with the ball like he was earlier in the year, talking about Akins. Tyson Walker takes good care of the ball. Dynamic scorer, good with the drive. You don't see Tyson turn it over a lot. So the ball's in the hands of Hogard, Tyson, Holloman. They just individually do a good job taking care of the ball. Akins is not real good with the ball off the dribble, but he's not doing much off the dribble right now. They've curtailed that. You combine all of that, you have fewer turnovers. Secondly, Michigan State does not have much low post scoring. A lot of turnovers come on entry passes or the big man in the post throwing out of it or getting stripped and so forth. So there's not a lot of paint touches for Michigan State, for better or worse. And if you have fewer paint touches, you're going to have fewer turnovers probably. Michigan State's always been a team that has had a high number of turnovers because of the way they play. The blitz counter break and trying to move and transition a lot. When you're a fast-breaking team, and I understand Michigan State's fast break does not always work, but when it is working, or when they're trying to do it, that's where turnovers come. They'll come, and a lot of times Izzo's been like, yeah, we hate to have 17, 18, 19 turnovers, but as we get the transition game established, we're going to blow up some rockets in the meantime. This year, the transition game is starting to show some traction. It looked really good in the blitz counter break, the best it's looked all year. Scoring after made baskets by the opponent, it's the best it's been all year. In that game, did not sustain it in the second half. Hogard took blame after practice yesterday, saying he wasn't doing things properly, but they'll try to get that better against Wisconsin. It's very hard to run against Wisconsin. They do a really good job getting back on defense. That being said, Wisconsin has always gotten back on defense really well against Michigan State, whether it was Dick Bennett or Bo Ryan or Greg Gard. They've always gotten back on defense. Makes it hard for Michigan State to run against Wisconsin. Meanwhile, Wisconsin gets back on defense. They don't go to the offensive glass. However, in the first game in early December, Wisconsin gets back on defense, but they also did damage on the offensive glass. Still not sure how they did that. They picked their battles as to when to go to the offensive glass and made it work. Anyway, Michigan State's transition game has always led to a propensity of high turnovers. And as the season goes along, as they curtail it, that's when the team gets better. But this team, Hogard, Walker, really good at handling the ball, avoiding turnovers. Curtailed it. They're trying to get the transition game going now more and more. As they do that, can they continue to be better? The best team Izzo's had in terms of reducing turnovers. Ironically, it comes in a season when they don't have one of their better rebounding teams, so they can't get it all together in that regard. Question 10, Will Bean from Byron Center, and he's on a cruise in the Caribbean out of Port Everglades. He will not have access to the internet, but he'll be watching this at a later date. He says, can you speak about the three legacy recruits, Strayhorn, Smith, and Burris? Positions, talent level, etc. Strayhorn, we talked about him earlier, offensive lineman, IMG, Michigan State reoffered him this week. They'll get him in for a visit. He's just getting to know the new coaches. Elijah Burris, Plexico Burris' son. He's not as tall as Plex. He's 6'1", 170. Notre Dame offered him January 11th. Prior to that, his offers were Duke, Cincinnati, East Carolina. Kind of an unranked guy, but I looked at his film last night for the first time. I think his film looks excellent. I think he plays bigger than 6'1". Terrific release moves, plant, change direction with burst, cutting ability on double moves. The hands look good, high points the ball. If Michigan State decides they like him, I got to believe Michigan State's going to be a factor there. Plexico has remained a Michigan State fan over the years. He's still friends with Mateen, and everybody from Mateen Cleaves to even Mark D'Antonio could be utilized in this recruitment. Mark D'Antonio, of course, recruited Plexico Burris. Smith. The Smith twins, Robert Smith. Remember Robert Smith, defensive end in the Sabin era, lives in Texas. He has twins, Robert Jr. and Romer. Robert and Romer. Romer looks like he's the better of the two right now. He's 6'4", 225, 10th grader, Katy, Texas, Ridge Point High School. He was all-district 6A as a sophomore. Thank you to Texas Top 100 for that information. And Michigan State's aware of him, and and you have Courtney Hawkins recruiting Texas. Courtney's a Flint guy. Robert's a Flint guy. You can see Michigan State having the potential to do some damage there, but you never know. I mean, you thought Michigan State would have been in good with Muhsin Muhammad and his son, but his son wanted to stay and go to Texas A&M, stay down there. Understandable. So I would imagine Michigan State has a chance to get inside track with those guys. Have not detected it yet, but stay tuned on that. Question 11, Tim from Ypsilanti. He says, what are your expectations, ceiling, and floor for the 2024 Michigan State football team? The floor, I think, is 5-7. I think that they're going to be a well-coached team. I think they're going to be as physical as they can with the parts that they have. I think they'll play a responsible, respectable, disciplined brand of football, and they've got a chance to get everything they can out of the talent that they have. I think with this schedule, I think something at 7-5 is possible or above, but the players have to play like we don't know they can. We don't know what Aiden Childs is all about. It'll be new for him. There'll be new guys in the offensive line, new at wide receiver. Have to wait and see at other positions, but I think that is possible. Question 12, Steve from Okemos says, can you compare coaches position by position between this staff and the previous staff? I think I already went through that earlier. I think there were two different coaches. I think I morphed those together. All right, let's go to question 13. But when I didn't mention special teams, Chad Wilt is the new special teams coordinator. He'll be sharing that with Bonafa. Bonafa did some special teams work as a GA at Hawaii years ago, so that's going to be new. Ross Ells, things on the special teams really were a struggle in recent years, especially this year. The Rutgers game started with the dropped snap when they're up 24-6. The decision to go. There have been all kinds of problems on special teams. Just getting lined up, getting 7 men on the line of scrimmage, not having the legal motion. It was bizarre, the problems that were taking place special teams. That being said, Ross Els, I mean, I respected and appreciated his whole rap as a special teams coach the first couple of years. And man, I don't know what happened this year. And you look back at him, he was special teams coordinator at Nebraska for 3 years, special teams coordinator at Colorado for 2 years, special teams coordinator at Ohio University for 4 years. He had the resume. I'm just not sure why the special teams wheels fell off the way they did. To Ross Els' credit, they went out and recruited Eckley, the punter from Florida, as a walk-on. He was good. Like it or not, Behringer really improved. Did Ross Els have anything to do with that? I'm not sure. Ross Els went out and recruited Jonathan Kim. Good recruiting job. Kim was place kicking was really good this year. The previous year or two, it was bad. Solved that problem. Eckley, good at punter. They brought in O'Shaughnessy from Ohio State. Eckley outproduced him, became the punter. But Eckley directionally, accidentally punted to Cooper DeJean for Iowa, changed the game. They had a punt return coverage to this side, it kicked it to that side to him. And then the next week, Eckley didn't start. O'Shaughnessy starts. Fumble, punt, snap against Rutgers. Cost them the game. Punt team cost them those 2 games. Ross Els didn't coach him to drop the snap, but the pooch punt, I don't know if that was Barnett's call or what. The pooch kickoff, this was against Rutgers. Michigan State fumbles the snap, 14 minutes to go. It's 24-13, and Michigan State has their hands team in looking for an onside kick with like 14 minutes to go. Might have been 12 minutes to go. Might have been 14. Hands team with one guy deep at the 20-yard line, maybe the 15-yard line. Had all this open space along the sidelines. Rutgers goes ahead, kicks it off deep. Were they really expecting an onside kick with 13 minutes to go? Like full-fledged hands team. I could see having 2 deep and onside kick aware, but they were full-fledged onside kick. It didn't hurt them that time, but Rutgers scores again. Next time they kick off, Michigan State, exact same hands team look. They had already seen it. They're like, hey, there's like 5 minutes left in the game or 4 minutes left. They did the pooch kickoff to the vacant area. Terrell Henry doesn't go over and do an onside kick. He comes in, fumbles it. They get it. They score, and Michigan State can't score to win. 4 minutes to go. Full-fledged hands team with 13 minutes to go. Hindsight 2020 mistake, but it also tipped their hand as to how they would do it, and it led. Everybody does hands team somewhat the similar way, but Rutgers was able to talk amongst themselves and say, hey, if they do that again, let's pooch it. Pooched it. That was all special teams. But also in the fourth quarter, Michigan State could not stop the run. The combination of pratfall and special teams and being soft against the run in the fourth quarter, recipe for a disaster on the road, even though they were up 24-6 in the fourth quarter, still found a way to lose it. So Ross Els had the resume, but man, special teams wheels just fell off, and I don't have an explanation for it. And he never spoke at any of the press conferences this year. Maybe for good reason. Never got much of an explanation on that whole deal. Matt in East Lansing says, Jim, can Adam Nightingale win a national title this year for Michigan State? Can Adam Nightingale win a national championship for Michigan State? Probably not. But in that tournament, in the hockey tournament, in that sport, if you're in the field of 16, you have a chance. And Big Ten teams dominated the NCAA tournament last year. I realize Quinnipiac won the national title. They beat Michigan. They beat Minnesota, a couple of one-goal games. But the early round games, Ohio State, Minnesota, Michigan, Minnesota, some Penn State. First round games, they were winning games 8-2, 10-1, dominated the first round. And then I think it was Penn State versus Ohio State in the second round, so that knocked one Big Ten team out. Minnesota looked like they were going to win it, but Quinnipiac beat them at the end. But the Big Ten was dominant last year in the tournament. And if the Big Ten is still the strongest conference in the country this year, we'll have to wait and see if it is. But if Michigan State is leading the Big Ten right now, they've got big games coming up this weekend at Munn Ice Arena against Minnesota. That's going to be a tough ticket. It's going to be a lot of fun. I plan to be there on Saturday. I won't be there on Friday, but I'll be there on Saturday. Coverage, SpartanMag.com. You got Wisconsin still coming later in the year and another 2 games with Michigan. So Michigan State might not win the Big Ten, but I don't know. The way they played the last period and a half at Ann Arbor led me to believe that I wasn't seeing things in the first portion of the Big Ten season. And if you're good enough to win the Big Ten, I'm not sure Michigan State's that good, but I'm not saying they're not either. If you win the Big Ten, you go to that tournament, you got a chance to win the national title. Michigan State's still kind of young. They're still, there were some mistakes against Michigan, giving up some stretch passes for breakaways in that first game. Michigan State made some adjustments, didn't give those up in the second game. And Nightingale said that, his players were just kind of getting to the puck and hacking at it. And he impressed upon them the importance of getting the puck and possessing it like you had all season. And that game changed in the last period and a half at Michigan. Michigan's coach said, hey, we gave them everything that they scored on. And Michigan did make some mistakes that Michigan State capitalized on. But Michigan State in hockey at Michigan, the last period and a half, doing the things they did against Notre Dame and Penn State, possessing the puck, shots on goal, skill, speed, looked real good. I wasn't sure that Michigan State could play the possession, skill, speed thing against Michigan after watching the first game, 7-1 that Michigan won at East Lansing last Friday. Michigan has really good talent. Not as good as talent as they had last year. Had great talent last year. Made the Final Four. Then they were never able to get over the hump with Pearson, with all the first-round draft choices that they had. They had like John Calipari level of first-round draft picks and never got over the hump. Got in trouble. Fired the coach. The new coach remains to be seen how well he's going to do. Michigan State's going to recruit better and better than they have in recent years. And, Michigan's done a really good job recruiting over the years, but that could flip to Michigan State here in the years going forward. And the talent thing, Michigan still had an edge in talent, but I think it could go like this in Michigan State's favor in the years ahead. And even if it doesn't and Michigan stays strong, Michigan State's going to be strong. Can they do it this year? I didn't think they'd do it in 2007. Got in the tournament, had a lot of guys playing the team game, blocking shots, beat Maine in the Final Four, beat Notre Dame in the regionals, beat Boston University in the round of 16. The first 2 rounds were in Grand Rapids that year, beat Maine with Ben Bishop in goal in the Frozen Four. And with Boston College, never really led that game. They were just kind of in striking distance, tie game, striking distance, tie game. And at the very end, they score and win. Was it Kennedy or advocated to Kennedy to win the game? 2007 just kind of all came together. Didn't think they had a chance to do it that year. You never know with that sport. They get in, they're going to have a chance. It'll depend on matchups. It's possible. I doubt it, but it's possible. Now, what happened in that Michigan game to give up those breakaways? Nightingale says we are not a program that's going to give up a chance to get a chance. He doesn't want to play ping pong in this thing. They want to be responsible. That being said, they do have their defensemen pinch in aggressively. And can that give up stretch passes the other way? Maybe. Actually, I got to get going. I got a Zoom thing coming. I'm glad I set my reminder. I've got to go do a work thing here in a minute. But it's possible. It's worth watching. It's going to be interesting to see. Big game this weekend with Minnesota. Question 14, Lee from Flossmoor, Illinois, given all the reports that Jason has on the staff. Looks like they're more aggressive on the road than the previous staff. Am I correct? Answer is yes. Talked about that earlier. And I think I've got to wrap it up. Let me go over here to the comments section. I had some other questions. I appreciate those of you that ask questions. Not going to be able to get to them all. And it looks like we're all done. Appreciate the comments, the comments over in the comments section. Appreciate the posts over at the Underground Bunker message board. Give us a like here at the channel. Get out to Munn Ice Arena this weekend. It's standing room only. I don't think there's standing room. I think it's all sold out, but you can go on secondary market. I don't know what the get-ins are. Last week, the get-ins were, when I talk about get-ins, like to get in the building, it was like $90 the day before the game. The day of the game, it dropped down. There was one ticket available for $58, single tickets. I've not seen Breslin Center have higher get-in the last 2 or 3 years than Munn had last Friday. Minnesota this weekend, it's going to be exciting. It's going to be entertaining. That's Friday and Saturday. Hey, there's good wrestling in town, too. Michigan State, Big Ten wrestling's cool, and I've not been able to get a chance to watch them at home because I went to the Midlands in Chicago December 30th. Saw Caleb Fish there, but I've not been able to watch any home meets because there's been conflicts with hockey or basketball. But good stuff over there also. All right. Appreciate all the support. Appreciate all the likes. Go to SpartanMag.com. Become a subscriber. We'd love to have you over there. Appreciate the support. Jason Killip, Conan Dyke, Noah Sprunger, Jake Laskow, all the work being done at SpartanMag.com. Appreciate the writers that bring content to the Michigan State fans. Underground Bunker Message Board, the Church of What's Happening Now. I'll be over there answering questions along with our staff all the time. Everybody be safe. Have a good Wednesday night and a good Thursday. We will see you later. Take care.